Check 1, 2, 3. Check, 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 check. கேக்குறதா? கேக்குதா? Okay. Good morning and namaste to everyone. Thanks a lot for your patience. The weather has been very inclement and there has been a delay to start this, but thanks a lot for waiting. Once again, good morning to everyone in the hall and the online audience. It's such a beautiful morning and it is totally my privilege that here I'm in the midst of luminaries, legends, great achievers in the field of music. We have an eminent panel today, and I'd first like to request Dr. TKVS Mani sir, who will do the introductions for everybody for the lectum. And I welcome all the panelists to come in. Please take the stage. I'm going to make an announcement of the names. We'll start with my guru, Dr. Radha Venkatachalam, who's going to moderate the session. Please. I'd like to welcome Dr. Sriram Parasuram sir. Dr. Vijayalakshmy Subramaniam. Dr. Gayathri Girish. Dr. Radha Bhaskar ma'am. Dr. Hemalatha ma'am. And finally, Mohan Santhanam sir. I'd now welcome TKVS Mani sir to make the introductions, the artist introductions.
Good morning, everyone. People might have seen me, but they would not have associated me with Music Education Trust because I have been surfacing on and off. But I know that at least Radhaji and Mohan, who are here, they know me since the inception. I'm a participant observer to music, and participant observer in the sense I learned the art. I have accompanied Professor TRS on more than 300, 400 occasions all over the world. That kind of an opportunity that he gave me. So I am happy to be here today to perform the task of welcoming and introducing a very erudite, experienced and eminent panel. Uh, although we are late by about 20 minutes, still because I'm there with the organization for the last 33 years, I thought it will not be inappropriate to share a few thoughts on the inception. It is exactly 33 years now. We formed this Music Education Trust in 1989, and that is roughly the experience span of Dr. Gayathri Girish also. I think she has been singing for about 30 and odd years. This I got from the information. The two ideas which I want to convey before I introduce the artist, only to recount what Professor TRS used to say. It's not mine. He used to say 50 years ago, Pechakora Kuda rendu paatu paadungra kaalam. Less talk and more songs. These are the words of Professor TRS. About 50 years ago, that was a thing. Now we have reached a stage, let us talk music. Let us talk about music. What is there to talk about? Once it is there in an institution and we get doctorates, we also learn that there is an academic understanding of the art which needs to be promoted, which all of them are actually doing. And for those who are associated, it is not new. You see, the very first concert series framed by TRS, I have brought it for proof. Festival of Concerts and Seminar. Festival of Concerts and Seminar. And you know, yesterday, I think when somebody introduced, they briefly mentioned, but when we formulated the objectives, we have very clearly mentioned that. In fact, we have 5 objectives. Providing an atmosphere where children can find learning music a pleasure. 2, disseminating musical wisdom through competent teachers. 3, organizing music meets. He called it music meets. Not only music concerts, but also lecture demonstrations by scholar musicians. And we are having one today. Constituting a top-level team of scholar musicians to foster research and advanced training. Promoting mutual understanding between the two great traditions of music, Carnatic and Hindustani. It's here, I want to say, the very first seminar was chaired by Professor TRS, inaugurated by MLV Madam, and by Vinay Chandra Maudgalya of Gandhara Mahavidyalaya. The very first seminar was on preparatory lessons in Hindustani and Carnatic music. And we also had another seminar later to close. So that actually also talked about the two systems. So he was committed to both the systems. That is one thing which I actually wanted to convey. Then the second thing with which I am associated, and myself and Professor Radha, we have produced a few cassettes together or discussions together. There is a lot to be done. It is only that I want to emphasize. Now, what is happening is, we do not know how music research is done in other places. Although in an age of technology, it should reach formally and easily, but it is not happening. Even music knowledge produced in India doesn't reach the institutions. So it is, as an academician from another discipline, I thought I must express, on which we have had a lot of discussions. See, the two areas which I thought should be brought to the notice of people who are working on music, such great people who are seated on the dais, is one, a course which I teach in JNU, Music Cultures of the World. Second, with so much of gender studies, there is a lot of things which are being published. One name that comes to my mind straight away is Amanda Wiedemann. Even last week, I was reading a paper in cultural anthropology. It is titled Politics of Voice and Female Identity in early 20th century. The two voices were Pattammal and Vijayalakshmy. So it is only, by the way, of bringing it to your knowledge, that there are areas like music cultures, etc. When I say music culture, earlier people have been writing on philosophy of music. We know that in India it is Atma. I mean, the way it is analyzed, principle is Atma, metaphor is the emanating vital breath, value is continuity, concept is emergence and flow, state is outpouring, nature is immaterial, agent is word, vak. You know, that's a vast area. In any case, that's for another seminar to which others are familiar with, but this seminar is on analytical study of the Trinity compositions, and I have the privilege of introducing the panel, which is, as I would like to repeat, it is talented, experienced, erudite, and eminent. I think I will begin with my friend Dr. Sriram Parasuram. Anecdotally, we met in 1991, whether he remembers or not, I don't know. It was the inauguration of Pittsburgh Hall. Vempatti Chinna Sadyam was to inaugurate, but Dr. Balamurli Krishna gave the first concert, and Dr. Sriram Parasuram was on the violin, and Ramnad Raghavan was on the mridangam. It was in 1991. This concert was followed by T.K. Govindrao on Dasar. You can't imagine the two accompanies. Both were Venkatachalam Subramaniam, Saraswati Vagayakara, N.V. Subramaniam, and myself. It was 1991. So why I refer to this is since then I know him. He's a very multi-talented musician, known for his competence of both the systems. And after MSG sir, I think he is the only authority in India, in Madras, and competent to speak about both the systems with elan. So I have been listening to his lectures on YouTube, etc. And he is disseminating that musical wisdom through workshop and number of lectures. Then I am also happy to see another person who has got the actual administrative experience. How to produce it, I mean, innovative programs. I am talking about Dr. Vijayalakshmy. We have seen her programs. It were all innovative. The thing is, to talk about music, one should be properly trained in music and should think about and produce. And I am also happy to say that she is her MA is in economics, I think. So that is very relevant today. If I make a statement, it is the middle class surplus which is sustaining culture than any patronage. We have conducted a lot of surveys. Basically, it is the middle class surplus which is sustaining our culture, because we owned this music in 1930s as a part of our identity. So I am very happy she is exposed to foreign audience. She has taught in Durham, and she is a sought after person to talk about music. I said, let us talk about music. Then we have Dr. Radha Bhaskar. I'm sorry, Radha Bhaskar, because when I say Mudra, it is only the Mudra stands. Whether it is Radha or Bhaskar, it is one and the same. Two sides of the same coin, or the better half, whatever it is. She is another person who is very popular with this music appreciation. You know, why I am saying again and again is, dissemination of musical wisdom is absolutely necessary, because I remember one Narada Srinivas Rao. If people have seen him, he used to write, Isai Theni in Eluduvar. Therinji Padanam, Purinji Kekanam, the stage. That is the title he used to write on that Narada. பாடுறவாள என்ன பாடுறான்னு தெரிஞ்சு பாடணும், கேட்குறவாள என்ன பாடுறான்னு புரிஞ்சு கேட்கணும். So that is the stage that they represent. So all these people are doing yeoman service through dissemination of music, music appreciation. Then we have another scholar musician with a PhD, and as I said, over 3 decades, and each one of them also represent a certain legacy. Probably Dr. Vijayalakshmy represents Rajam and that line, and I think Dr. Radha Bhaskar represents the Chemmangudi lineage, and Dr. Girish, she represents Shankara Shivam, Seshagopalan, that lineage also. Because how music has been transmitted differently, the pedagogic aspect of music, which is also equally important. Then we have another great, much sought after violinist, Dr. Hemalatha. All these people actually don't require any introduction. It is only acknowledgement on the part of the Music Education Trust that they are all here to talk about music. And finally, my young friend, Mohan Santhanam, who belongs to the Sishya Parampara of Kotishwarayar, had his initial training from his mother, but he belongs to my category. We do a different job, but we have a serious hobby and think about it. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity to welcome this panel on behalf of the Trust and to share few thoughts from 1989. Thank you very much. Now Dr. Radha Venkatachalam, again, she is the one-man army. Although we were four others, see 2. As far as TRS was there, it was 2013. After that, she is running it. I have been surfacing very, very rarely, but this time I thought that I must participate, and then I have also the privilege of introducing the panel. Over to Dr. Radha.
Dr. T.K.V.S. Mani introduced all the other members of the panel, but there is a lot to say about him. His discipline is history, and he was a dean and head of the department in Delhi University in the history department. Not only that, he was chairman of the standing commission there, and also he has got he has multiple talents, and he conducted history congress very well for years together, and not only in Delhi but in so many other places. In addition to this, he has been a performing mridangam artist, for a very long time, and has accompanied all the leading artists of yesteryears and also this generation. I had the opportunity of his accompaniment, during my US and other places travel, where he accompanied me on the mridangam, and N.V. Subramaniam was accompanying me on violin. So he multifaceted person, he now because most of you may not be knowing, what his capacity is. Being a founder trustee of the Music Education Trust, I feel extremely honored that he was able to make it this year. He had other commitments till last year, and this year he made it to be present during the December festival. And moreover, he has introduced all the panelists of today's program. I request that they all have been given allotted a particular aspect on the subject, so they will be discussing those subject in a brief, and we expect the audience reaction, and they will reply the questions being asked by the listeners. Dr. Hemalatha will be the first person to speak on raga, the raga aspect, the comparative study of the raga aspect of the Trinity. ಸರಿ.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. Distinguished panelists, I'll be talking about the ragas handled by the Trinity. Of the three, Shyama Sastri has handled only a few ragas. Of course, most of them have been handled by the other two, Tyagaraja and Dikshidhar. For example, Ananda Bhairavi, Riti Golai, Kalyani, Shankarabharanam, Todi. However, Shyama Sastri has handled two ragas, namely Kalgada and Chintamani. In Chintamani, we have this Devi Brova Samayamide, and in Kalgada, we have this Parvati Ninune. Of course, Tyagaraja has handled one composition in Kalgada. The Lakshana is different from that handled by Shyama Sastri. With this brief introduction about Shyama Sastri's handling of ragas, because I want to focus on the ragas handled by Tyagaraja and Dikshidhar, because they have followed two distinct schools. Namely, Tyagaraja has handled the ragas that come in the Melakarta school, and Dikshidhar has handled the ragas that come in the Raganga Raga school. A brief introduction is, in 1620, when Venkatachalam wrote the Chaturdandi Prakashika, he did not name the 72 melas, he only named 19 melas and said that these 19 melas are popular in his time, and only these 19 melas have janyas, so I'm naming only these 19. So after the period of Venkatachalam, the naming of melas were done during the 18th century. While naming the melas, you get two distinct schools. One is the Raganga Raga school, which is propounded by Muddu Venkatachalam in his Raga Lakshanam, who is supposed to be the descendant of Venkatachalam, and another school which is the Melakarta school. It is seen in the Sangraha Chudamani of Govinda. Of course, the period of Govinda is not yet ascertained, and Govinda talks about the Melakartas. The first time the Kanakangi, Ratnangi, the scheme comes only in Sangraha Chudamani of Govinda. While mentioning the melas, it is interesting that Govinda mentions the melas Kanakambari, Penadyuti, Gana Samavarali and so on, which has been termed as earlier Kanakambari nomenclature by Professor Sambamurthy. But Govinda, while discussing the Janyaragas, he gives them under Kanakangi, Ratnangi, Ghanamurti and so on. So we get three different names, nomenclature. That is the earlier nomenclature, earlier Kanakambari nomenclature available in Sangraha Chudamani, and the Kanakangi nomenclature in Sangraha Chudamani, which gives the Janyaragas, and the Kanakambari nomenclature which has been followed by Muthuswami Dikshidhar and his descendants. So in this 72, we have 6 common ragas, namely Todi, Maya Malagolai, Shankarabharanam, Chalanata, Varali and Kalyani. These 6 have been handled by Tyagaraja and Dikshidhar. And the Kanakambari nomenclature, according to the Melakarta school, is a Asampurna Padati. But this school believed that if it is 7 swaras in Arohana and Avrohana, the raga is Sampurna. That's why they call Kedar Golai or Shri Ragam or Riti Golai as Sampurna, because they have all the 7 swaras when you take the Arohana and Avrohana together. Whereas with the advent of Melakarta and by putting the Janya Ragas under this Melakarta, a standardization has happened by which we call the ragas handled by Dikshidhar as Janyas of the particular Melakarta. However, we have to understand that the ragas handled by Dikshidhar comes in the Raganga Raga school and ragas handled by Tyagaraja comes in the Melakarta school. And in the Raganga Raga school, there is a unique way of handling these ragas because this school believed in the term Vivadi Dosha. And this school followed many of the ragas that were in vogue in the 16th and 17th century. That's why the ragas like Samavarali, Deshakshi, Kashi Ramakriya, all of them, they were adapted into the system of Raganga Ragas. However, as Venkatachalam said, the other 53 were created by the later authors, and that has been handled by Dikshidhar. In that you get the source is actually Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradeshni of Subramaniam Dikshidhar, where you get only 68 ragas, that is 68 Raganga ragas have this compositions of Muthuswami Dikshidhar. 4 ragas don't have compositions under him, that is Muthuswami Dikshidhar. That is Dunibinna Shadjam, Rama Manohari, Shiva Panturali and Chamaram. Probably these 4, that is, we have this Matangi, Sri Rajarajeshwari in Rama Manohari, Siddhivinayakam in Chamaram and Sri Satyanaranam in Shiva Panturali. These are all available from the other sources of Dikshidhar's compositions. However, in the source Sampradaya Pradeshni, it is not available. And when you look at the unique characteristics of the Raganga Ragas, first, they won't have the Sarigama Padanisa Sanidapa Magarisa. And with respect to the Vibhadi, there are so many restrictions. The Vibhadi note should not be rendered in a Krama pattern. That is the first rule for avoiding Vibhadi dosha. Hence, if you look at the first 6 ragas of the system, Kanakambari, Penadhyuti, Gana Samavarali, Bhanumati, Manoranjani and Tanukirti, all of them will omit Shuddha Gandharam in the Arohanam. However, it is present in the Avarohanam. And if it is Suddha Nishadam, then the Kanakambari will omit. Kanakambari has Sari Ma Pada Sa Sani Da Pamadari Sa. So this is the rule for all the 12 ragas, that is all the first 12 ragas of any chakra. It will definitely omit the Suddha Nishadam. Likewise, if it is Shatruti Rishabham and Antara Gandharam, that is, they have the ragas, previous ragas, and they have formulated it. For example, Samavarali was there when Venkatachalam named the 19. So Samavarali did not have the Shuddha Gandharam in the Arohanam. So the rest of the 5 have been formulated on the basis of Samavarali. And if you take up the second chakram, no raga was available, but they formulated it on the basis of the Shuddha Daivatam and Kaisik Nishadam, which were available. That is, Vasanta Bhairavi was there and Riti Golai was there. They did not have the Padanisa Prayogam. So they have been formulated in that way. Likewise, if you look at Kedara Golai or Sri Ragam, which omitted Daivatam in the Arohanam. So all these ragas, that those have the Chaturshti Daivatam and Kaisik Nishadam, they will be omitting the Daivatam in the Arohanam, or they will be as Panidanisa. Even though it is not Vivadi, they have a formulation for that. So the ragas handled by Muthuswami Dikshidhar include these 72 Raganga ragas, and apart from that, he has also included ragas like Gopika Vasantam, Mahuri, Malava Panchamam, Margadeshi, Purvi. These are all, that is, you have only compositions of Dikshidhar in these ragas. And while coming to Tyagaraja has followed the Melakarta scheme. But if you look at the compositions that were composed by him in the ragas, that is, Manavati came very late because in the earlier publications, the Manavati composition is not there. Of course, the Manoranjani is there. And Vanaspati is not available in the earlier publications. It came very late. So it is understood that Tyagarajas also handled only the Janya Ragas, if it is coming to Vivadi. And apart from that, Professor P. Samamurthy says that Tyagarajas handled 84 ragas. He calls these set of ragas as Vinta ragas. That is, they are novel ragas which have been handled only by Tyagaraja. These include Amrita Vahini, Ranjani, and Palamanjari, Kokila Varali. These ragas have handled only by Tyagaraja. Again, even though Samamurthy calls them as Vintaragas, but because Samamurthy gives one more statement, either Tyagaraja followed any sampradaya or he himself has created these ragas. But it is not true because we don't get any reference to Tyagaraja creating ragas. However, there is an unpublished work which has been researched, Somanarya's work, which gives these 72, apart from Sangraha Chudamani, which gives the names of the 72 Melakartas and also the ragas handled by Tyagaraja. So, the gist of this is, all of them have handled some ragas in common, and Tyagaraja has handled some ragas peculiar to his own style, and some ragas are peculiar in Dikshita's style. With this, I hope I have conveyed at least an introduction to the ragas handled by all the three. Thank you.
It was an enlightening aspect, which she disclosed, and I would have been. I hope most of you would have understood what she expressed. Actually, I wanted her to introduce, what is Raganga Ragas. Probably, she forgot to do that. She will do it, in her next bout when she speaks again. Now, I request Gayathri Girish to start her topic on the language. Notice. Sai, notice one.
Namaskaram to all present here, and my pranams to all the distinguished panelists here. This is a great opportunity for us to be here today as part of this panel discussion on the comparative analysis of the music Trinity, various aspects of their contributions. I have been given the topic of language usage, which is seen in the music Trinity. I would like to first touch upon the aspect of how language has evolved from the ancient to the Trinity period, and then I will go one by one about each of them. Our music has passed through many significant milestones over many centuries. Though the several forms of music generated over the different periods differ in their form, their content, and the language usage, they do represent a continued progression of a great tradition, each inspiring its next form. The music in our country, just as its philosophies and the branches of art forms, follows the beautiful path of continuity, blending in the changes without compromising its fundamentals. Much before the theories and concepts of raga were fully established and developed, one of the major forms that came to the fore was the prabandha, which in its various forms dominated the music scene in our country for more than about 1,000 years, till the end of the 17th century. The Prabandha was quite rigid in every aspect and it was very tightly structured. To understand how the language has evolved over the centuries, I think we have to look at these forms very briefly, the different forms that have emerged after the Prabandha. The first significant branching was probably the Daru, which was derived from the ancient Dhruva songs or the stage songs described in the 32nd chapter of Bharata's Natya Shastra. During the times of the Nayaks of Tanjavur, the Yakshagana, Bhagavata Mela Nataka and some other dance dramas were very popular. And Darus were widely employed in all these forms of dance dramas or Gaya Nataka. Some of the earliest Darus that have come down to us are from Vijay Raghava Nayaka's Yakshagana, the Vipra Narayana Charita. Daru that is commonly used in dance dramas is basically a story song which is called Akhyana, narrating an event. Therefore, the language or the lyrics are an essential part of the Daru. Shri Mellattur Venkataram Shastri, who was a senior contemporary of Shri Tyagaraja, is said to have composed as many as 12 dance dramas, the Bhagavata Mela Nataka, employing these Darus. And the Kuchipudi dance dramas also employ Darus in their narratives. Among the Trinity of our music, Shri Tyagaraja in his dance drama Nauka Charitram used Darus. For instance, one of its Daru, Indu Kemi set to Varali Ragam in Chaputala, is of the Samvada Daru type. Here two characters speak alternatively, the Uttara and Pratyuttara through songs. So this was one kind of language that was used when the Daru form was very popular. With the steady decline of Prabandha subsequently and the rise of regional languages, a range of musical compositions and rhythmic variations began to take place. Those with lighter and attractive musical content, set in simpler words, easy to understand, gained popularity as what is called the Kirtanas or the Padas. From the 7th century onwards, the Bhakti movement in the country saw hundreds of saint singers and religious teachers. Shaivite and Vaishnavite saints wrote Tevarams and Divya Prabandhams. Devotional singers like Purandara Dasa, Bhadrachala Ramdas, Annamacharya, Mirabai, Surdas, Kabir Das and many more saint singers composed thousands of simple devotional songs which had profuse messages of bhakti, virtuous living and universal love. These songs were set to simple language, simple rhythms and appealing tunes. Regional languages hence were being used for these songs to reach out to the masses. So during this period we saw that the Kirtana form of music began to flourish towards the end of the 14th century, and basically it was devotional music everywhere, aiming to invoke bhakti in the hearts of common folk. Subsequently, the scholarly musical forms such as the well-decorated Kritis, Swarajatis, Varna, Padam, Tillana, Javali, Ragamalikas were composed in large numbers. It is important to mention here that all these different forms of compositions drew their fundamentals from the ancient Prabandhas. Only the sections, the musical aspects, the language which was used in subsequent forms had assumed a more refined and transformed shape in these newer musical forms. We now see very briefly about the musical trinity. Saint Tyagaraja had the Ramayana epic as the theme for his music. The epic remains immortal for its depiction of all the human emotions in very simple language. He appeals to the Lord in various moods and expresses his lofty thoughts with great simplicity and ease. However, on the other hand, the outstanding aspect of Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar's compositions was his analytical approach to the rendering of the raga. He was an Advaitin, and the grandeur of the Sanskritam language lends its majesty to Dikshitar's style. In Dikshitar, we see the detached nature of a metaphysician. In Tyagaraja, we see the full maturity of a philosopher, while in Shyama Shastri, we see an atmosphere of hopefulness and tenderness from the sincere heart of a child, talking and conversing with his mother. Dikshitar's style has more words and less of vowel extensions and is compensated by the long drawn-out tempo of its musical structure. Therefore, we see a plenty of scope in is afforded for raga expressions in the essential details, even in his shorter pieces. In Tyagaraja's style of execution, the Sahitya is couched in fewer words with scope for more vowel extension. This is basically because of the language that has been used in each of their compositions. While we look at Tyagaraja Swami's compositions more in detail, when we say language, the first thing that comes to our mind is the usage of alliterations. The effective use of alliterations, which we see in many beautiful examples. I will just be giving one or two here, since we don't have much time to delve upon each of them. Alliteration is the use of the same syllable at the beginning of consecutive poetic lines. In our South Indian languages, there is a unique variation on alliterations, as it is applied not only to the first syllable in each line, but also to the second syllable. Let us see how Saint Tyagaraja weaves this beautiful poetic stylistic device into his compositions. His kritis are typically structured according to the Pallavi, Anupallavi, one or multiple charanams design. In this type of composition, he links the Pallavi and Anupallavi very beautifully with the second syllable alliteration scheme. Often the regular kind of alliteration using the first syllable is also found together with that of the second, while in some instances we find it extended even to the third syllable to increase the effect. We see many examples. For example, Sitamma Mayamma Vatatmaja. So Sitamma Vatatmaja. When you look at the syllable ta in the Pallavi and the Anupallavi, this is just one example where the alliteration is very beautifully used. And then Chakkani Raja Marga. Chakkani Raja Pallavi is ka. You see the syllable ka. Again, in the Anupallavi is Chikkani Palu. So the first and the syllable ka is repeated as the second syllable in both the Pallavi and the Anupallavi. And even within the Anupallavi itself, for instance, in Sitama Mayama, we see consecutive lines using the regular alliteration on the first syllable. Vatatmaja Saumitri Vainateya. So the va is repeated in the Anupallavi, within the Anupallavi itself. There are several such examples. There is very interesting observation. Tyagaraja Swami's 4 kritis, which begin with Bhajana Seya. The Atana kriti Bhajana Seya Radha, the Anupallavi is Aja Rudradu Laku Satatamu. So Bhajana Aja Rudra. This is one, again, the rhyming is there. In Kalyani, Bhajana Seyave, the Anupallavi is again Aja Rudradu Laku Bhusuradu Laku. So again Aja Rudra. The Narayani kriti Bhajana Seyu Margamunu. The Anupallavi is again Ajudu Rudra Akhandala. So again this Aja Rudra is commonly seen in all these 4. The Suruti kriti Bhajana Parula. Again the Anupallavi is Aja Rudra Suresha. So it's a very beautiful coincidence that the Anupallavi in all these 4, which begins with the word Aja Rudra. There are several such examples that we see. When we look at the mudras, the Tyagaraja Swami's mudra or the signatures that he has used, the mudra in the case of this composer crystallizes the ideas associated with him and present in an epithet or 2 or in sutra form the different facets of his personality. His mudra mostly takes the form of his own name and the name of Lord Shiva at his birthplace Tiruvarur, Swami Tyagaraja in Tiruvarur temple. This comes in handy since the bulk of his songs are on Lord Rama. According to the background of Rama worship, it is Lord Shiva who taught the efficacy of the Rama Nama. He himself mentions this in the Kriti Saramegani. The bulk of the mudras take the simplest form of addressing Rama as Tyagaraja Sannuta or Tyagaraja Nuta, meaning one who is praised by the composer of that name or one who is praised by Lord Shiva. Devi is hailed as a sister of Vishnu or sister of Rama. In the Kriti Vinayakuni, he addresses Parashakti and says, Tyagarajani Hridaya Saroja Melina Rama Sodari Parashakti, O sister of Rama who rules the lotus of the heart of Tyagaraja. So again he brings in Rama there, even though the Kriti is on Kamakshi. Rama is also spoken of in relation to his entire family. Tyagaraja Kula Pavana, Tyagaraja Kula Vibhusha, Tyagaraj Intane Nela Konnadi Devame. Rama who has stationed himself in Tyagaraja's house, as we see in Chakkani Raja. We all know about Navavida Bhakti. So even in his mudras, he brings in these various aspects of Navavida Bhakti. Like, for example, Kirtanam is one of the form of Bhakti. We see mudras like Tyagaraja Geya, Tyagaraja Geyudu, Tyagaraja Nuta, Tyagarajani Jihvapai Rajillu. So which all speak about the Bhakti form Kirtanam. Again, when we say Smaranam, Tyagaraja Cheyu Nama Smarane Sukhamu in the Kriti Janaranjani Kriti. When we talk of Archanam, he uses the mudras like Tyagaraja Archita, Tyagaraja Pujita, Shri Tyagaraja Nirupadhikudai, Archinchu. Similarly, when we talk of Sevanam, he says Tyagaraja Sevitaya in many kritis. Vandanam, Tyagaraja Vandita, Tyagaraja Vanditaya. Again, Dasyam is another form of bhakti, where he uses mudras like Dasa Tyagaraja, Bhrityudaina Tyagaraja, Nija Dasudaina Tyagarajoniki, Tyagaraja Raja, one whose ruler is Rama. This Tyagaraja Raja occurs in about 6 kritis of his. And we can give several examples for Sakhyam also, where he calls himself the friend of Rama. Tyagaraja Sakha, Tyagaraja Mitra, Tyagaraja Varamitra, Tyagaraja's best friend, Tyagaraja Apta, Tyagaraja Paksha, one who is always on Tyagaraja's side. And the ultimate form of devotion, which is Atma Nivedanam, that also occurs in his mudras. When we look at epithets, Tyagaraja Ripu Jalada Samira, Rama who blows away Tyagaraja's enemies just as the wind blows off clouds. When he talks about Rama protecting the devotee from distress, he uses mudras like Tyagaraja Pala, Tyagaraja Palaka, Tyagaraja Rakshaka, Tyagaraja Kheda Hara, and several more. I will now touch upon the language usage of Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar. He was an Advaitin. His mastery of Sanskritam and the vast literature in it is responsible for the creation of many beautiful kritis which are being sung today. According to him, the absolute can be worshipped both in the Saguna form and as the Nirguna Brahman. In many of his songs, he sings out that he has realized by the grace of his Guru the self to be the eternal and the Brahman. We saw several examples of how the Raga Mudra uses the language very beautifully, which was used by Tyagaraja. Similarly, when we talk of Muthuswami Dikshitar, the way he has brought in the Raga names within the composition has many fascinating examples. I'll just touch upon a very few of them. In the Kriti Hasti Vadanaya Namastubhyam, in the Raga Navroj, he says, Samana Varojase Mahase. Samana Vara Ojase means Ganapati's luster is like. So here the word Navaroj is very beautifully incorporated within the Sahitya. In the Kriti Chidambara Nataraja Murtim, in the Raga Tanu Kirti, the very beginning of the Kriti is Chidambara Chintayami Atanu Kirtim. So it's not Chintayami Tanu Kirtim. So the actual meaning when you split it is Chintayami Atanu Kirtim. Atanu means great. Atanu Kirtim refers to Lord Shiva, whose glory is great and unmatched. So here the mudra Tanu Kirti is very intelligently woven within the Sahitya. And then the very beautiful Mara Koti Koti Lavanya in the Raga Arabhi, Daruka Vana Tapodhana Taruni Mohakara Bhikshatana Veshadhara Shankara, which talks about the Bhikshatana form of Lord Shiva. Daruka Vana Tapodhana Taruni Mohakara Bhikshatana. So here you see the usage of Arabhi. Very intelligently he has brought in Arabhi in the phrase Mohakara Bhikshatana. And then in Shri Parvati Parameshwara in Bauli, Chit Bimbau Leela Vigraho, meaning that Parvati and Parameshwara are reflections of consciousness and they have assumed forms. Chit Bimbau Leela Vigraho. So when you bring Chit Bimbau Leela together, you see Bauli, the Raga Mudra comes here. So like this we can go on and on, giving several examples where the Raga Mudra very, very beautifully occurs within the line and it goes along with the meaning of the Kriti. We see a lot of Swarakshara usages. So this is again, in all the 3 of the Trinity, we see several examples. When we look at Muthuswami Dikshitar's compositions, Sadachaleshwaram in Bhupalam, the very beginning is a Swarakshara. And then there are several other examples like the Mahuri Kriti Mamava Raghuvira. When we look at the language and the choice of words that Muthuswami Dikshitar has employed, we see several fascinating examples. For example, he says in Shri Matrabhutam in the Raga Kannada, Somam Shirodhrita Surya Gangam. When we look into the meaning here, Somam means Sa Uma, along with Parvati. Shirodhrita Surya Gangam. One who has Ganga on his head is clear. But Surya, Lord Shiva does not have Surya on his head. So what does that mean? Shirodhrita Surya Gangam. Here Surya refers to the Arka plant. So Lord Shiva, in one of his depictions, he has the Arka plant on his head. So when we go deeper into these compositions and look at the language usage, we see how proficiently they have used the Sanskritam language here, and there are several such examples. In Siddhi Vinayakam, in Chamaram, he says, Krishna Rauhine Yanuja. This refers to one who was, why talk about Rauhine Yanuja in a Kriti on Ganapati, Siddhi Vinayakam. This refers to the one who is worshipped by Krishna, who is the younger brother, Anuja of Balarama. Balarama is referred as Rauhineya, the son of Rohini. He has used Rohini here to refer to Balarama to indicate the context of Krishna worshipping Ganesha. Rohini brings to our mind Chandra and the Mahabharata incident of the Shyamantaka Mani when Krishna worships Ganesha. So there is so much of reference to the Purana with the usage of a single word. So we see how powerful the language usage has been in several such examples of the Trinity. Again, when we see usage of compound words in kritis like Mamama Pattabhirama in Manirangu, Pankaja Mitra Vamsha Sudham Budhi Chandra Medini Pala Ramachandra. Such a beautiful usage. Pankaja Mitra Vamsha means Surya Vamsha. Pankaja Mitra is Surya. Ambudhi refers to the ocean and Chandra refers to the moon. Dikshita says that Rama to the Surya Vamsha is like the moon to the ocean. Pankaja Mitra Vamsha Sudham Budhi Chandra Medini Pala Ramachandra. This is one compound word. Similarly, in the Mangala Kaishiki Kriti, Shri Bhargavi Bhadram, we see Pada Nayanana Kara Nalini Parama Purusha Hari Pranayini Vadana Kamala Guruguha Dharani Varanuta Ranganatha Ramani. This is one compound word. This refers to Devi Mahalakshmi, who is the wife of Lord Ranganatha, who is worshipped by the husband of the lady who gave birth to Guru Guha, who has a lotus-like face. How beautiful the description is. Pada Nayanana Kara Nalini Parama Purusha Hari Pranayini Vadana Kamala Guru Guha Dharani Nuta Ranganatha Ramani Shri Bhargavi Bhadram. Also, talking about how he has used the Sanskrit language in different ways. For instance, to refer to the three eyes of Lord Shiva. The sun, moon and the fire are supposed to be the three eyes. How differently he has used this combination. He says Ravi Shashi Vanhi Netra. In some other compositions he says Dinakara Chandragni Lochanam, Nabhomani Chandragni Nayanam, Divakaragni Shashi Netra, Surya Chandragni Nayana, Rohinisha Ravi Vanhi Nayana, Dinakara Shashi Tejo Maya Lochana. How beautifully he brings in the synonyms and different meanings, with the same meaning, different words. All of them refer to the three eyes of Lord Shiva. And then when we talk about Yati, again I'm not going into the details, he has often used his lyrics in geometric patterns. He has employed the Gopucha Yati, the Shrotovaha Yati for structuring his lyrics. We see such examples in Shri Varalakshmi, the Sarasapade, Rasapade, Sapade, Pade, and even in Maye Tvam Yahi we see Sarasakaye, Rasakaye, Sakaye, Aye. And in the Kriti Tyagaraja Yoga Vaibhavam, he uses both the Gopuchayati and the Shrotovahayati. Tyagaraja Yoga Vaibhavam, Agaraja Yoga Vaibhavam, Raja Yoga Vaibhavam, Yoga Vaibhavam, Vaibhavam, Bhavam, Vam. And the Shrotovahayati, again in the same Kriti, Sham Prakasham, Swarupa Prakasham, Tattva Swarupa Prakasham, Sakala Tattva Swarupa Prakasham, Shiva Shaktyadi Sakala Tattva Swarupa Prakasham. So this expands like a river, which is first narrow, it expands. So that is the beautiful usage. Within the same Kriti, we see two different types of yatis being used. Again, the Prathamakshara and the Dvitiyakshara Prasa is seen in many compositions. In Kritis like Arunachalanatham, we see even the Antyanuprasa. Aprakrita Tejomaya Lingam, Atyadbhuta Karadhrita Sarangam, Aprameyam Aparnabja Bhringam Arudho Tunga Vrisha Turangam Viprotama Visheshanta Rangam Veera Guruguha Tara Prasangam Swadeepa Mauli Vidhrita Gangam Swaprakasha Jita Somagni Patangam. So the last word is in prasam. So the Antya Anuprasam is seen. These are several examples. And finally, when we talk of Sri Shyama Shastri's compositions, he has composed mainly in Sanskrit, in Telugu, and a few in Sanskrit, and we have a few in Tamil, like Tarunam Idamma in Gauli Pantu and Enneramam Onnamam in Purvi Kalyani. There is supposedly a kriti still in manuscript form, which is partly in Sanskrit and partly in Tamil. Among his immediate predecessors, Pallavi Gopal Iyer and Matru Bhutaya's style has influenced Shyama Shastri to a certain extent. His fascination for Rakti Ragas and Mishra Chapu gates may have had the inspiration from the Darus of the Natakas of the Bhagavata Mela, which we saw earlier. The deep-rooted faith of Shyama Shastri in Devi is clear in his very first kriti in Saveri, Janani Natajana Paripalini Pahimam, Bhavani, 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 Triloka. Here again, a very noteworthy feature is the repetition of the word Bhavani thrice. This immediately reminds us of the Bhavani Bhujanga Stotra, where the translation reads thus: those who continuously chant the name of Bhavani thrice are free from sin, sorrow, fear and attachment. This kind of repetition not only implies emphasis but also enhances the poetic beauty of the line with a rhetorical effect. We see a similar example in Mayamma, in the Kriti Mayamma in Raga Ahiri, where he says, Nammiti, Nammiti, Nammitini. There is an undercurrent of supreme confidence in his language. For example, in the Kriti Tarunam Idamma, he says, Anudinamum yendan vakil unnamam, aduvallal matrondrum illaye yen nemam. So this shows the supreme confidence that he had in his mother. In Shankarabharanam Kriti Devi Meena Netri, he says, Sevinche vari kellanu chintamaniya yunnara. For those who serve you, are you not chintamani? So we see the attitude of a child towards its mother in the language that he uses. His sincere prayer and humble request sounds like a demand in many instances. He is very assertive in his appeal to the mother, and this is seen in many kritis, even for instance in Palin Sukamakshi, where he gives many examples of how he is very assertive in his demands. Again, we see the usage of plenty of Swarakshara in his compositions. A few examples are Devi Ni Padasarasa in Kambodi, Sariye Varamma in Bhairavi. And again, the Swara Sahitya portions show how well the language matches with the Swara. If the Swara is a Hrasva, the language also, it brings in Hrasva syllables. Likewise, when you have a Dirgha Swara, you have a Dirgha syllable. So that is how the language matches so beautifully, even in the Swara Sahitya portions of Sri Shyama Shastri's compositions. So this is basically a very brief comparative study. There is much more. When I hopefully get the second round, I will probably touch upon how other composers like Annamacharya, Bhadrachala Ramdas have influenced Sri Tyagaraja and how we see slightly different usages. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
It was a nice talk, by Gayathri. But one or two things, I would like to point out it here. When I meant, language, it's the positive side of the language and the limitation of the language, not only in the employment but also in presenting. Those were the days when, the prosodical rules that existed, that it should be common for the Pallavi and Anupallavi should have a link between each other, and the prosodical letter can be a different, altogether different letter in the Charanam portion, isn't it? Am I correct, Radha ji? So in the 20th century that became in fact more profound with the composition of G.N.B. where he extended the second letter rhyme, throughout his compositions. So the rhyming was very, very, the rules of the prosody was different for the poetry, and for the composition it was different. their composition, you know, it had to strictly follow the second letter rhyming. In the, but there should be a relationship between the Pallavi and the Anupallavi, and it, in the Charanam, you know, it can be entirely different letter, which can be, you know, considered as the rhyming letter. And, you know, in fact, you know, that also differed, you know, for to the number of avartanas also. If it is Rupaka Talam, single Kala Kirtana, then, you know, it was the rhythmic, the prosodical letter occurred in the first and the fifth and ninth, like that it was. If it is Adi Talam, it is, you know, single Kala Kirtana, then, you know, it was, you know, alternative avartanas it. If it is a double Kala Kirtanas, it extended to every avartanam, you know, that the rules had to be maintained. These were all, that applies to Kanda Chapu as well as Mishra Chapu Talas also. Because this, for the smaller Talas, you know, it was 4 avartanas. And for the longer Talas, it was, if it is in a slow tempo, it is, you know, every avartanas. That was the rules. And moreover, you know, she pointed out that the yeti has been employed by Dikshitar alone. It is not like that, because it was all introduced by musicians, not intended by the composer. If it had been, they have given provision for that. It all depended upon the musician who knew the language, and he was able to split it. Even Tyagaraja has given, you know, such a beautiful yati pattern, you know, which can be employed, you know, in his composition, because people are not thorough with the language, they are not able to do that. For example, Evarikai, Avataram Etitivo, Dev Manori, he says, Avaniki Rammani Pilachira Maharaj Evado. You can split each word. When you are splitting, each word should give complete meaning. Evado, Raj Evado, Maharaj Evado, Pilachina Maharaj Evado, Rammani Pilachina Maharaj Evado, Avaniki Rammani Pilachina. So much, so beautifully. Similarly, you know, in Ragaratna Malikache, Bhagavato Tumulugudi, Pade Kirtanuleta, Kirtanamuleta, Kudi Pade Kirtanamuleta, Kudi Pade Kirtanamuleta, Uttamulu Kudi, Pade Kirtanamuleta, Bhagavato Tumulukudi. These are all, you know, provision has been given by the other composer also. Only thing, you know, because, you know, the musician, practicing musician is not very thorough with the language, he is not able to do that. But at least you can employ all these things when you are doing a Neraval in such places. So it is always better to, normally we say that, you know, the line chosen, you know, for Neraval should have a complete meaning. And even if you split the line, there should have a complete meaning on its own. So these are all things, you know, because, you know, if later, you know, I may forget to point out, since, you know, that's why, you know, I disclosed it at this juncture. So otherwise, you know, the Yamakam, you know, has also been employed by Tyagaraja in the Kirtana Saketa Niketana. He has used the word Raka to give a different meaning. He has used it 7 times in the Charanam portion. Each time, you know, it has got a different meaning. Raka means, you know, yes, Rakeshi Harana. Rakendu Mukha means night. The moon shines, you know, in the night, isn't it? So he has used that word Raka to give a different meaning, and he has very beautifully employed. See, why I'm not saying, you know, anything lesser, you know, about any composer, but we have to look into the other composers, you know, whether they have provided that in them. They have not, none of them, you know, have disclosed it that, you know, this should be employed as a yati or something. It is only in the musicians who are able to analyze that Sahityam, who know the meaning, and that, you know, each word, you know, by splitting, you know, we are able to get some complete meaning on its own. Then only, they will be able to do that. At least, during the Naraval, I request that, the practicing musician should employ all these duties, which they have not disclosed it so openly, but, provided. Thank you, Gayathri. The next one, is Radha ji, and, she is going to speak upon the structure of the compositions employed by all the three.
A very good morning to all of you, and first of all I would like to thank the Music Education Trust and Dr. Radha Venkatachalam for bringing out such a wonderful topic for discussion today here, because we are all in the listening mode of kacheris. So trying to elevate ourselves a bit on understanding the structure within the kacheri itself is an enlightening experience. So for that I thank her for choosing this wonderful topic. Of course, each of the Trinity are an ocean by themselves, so none of us can definitely do justice in terms of trying to, it's like picking up a drop from the big ocean. That's how it is. But while I was sitting here in the stage, I was just thinking about two things. First thing is, of course, we all know that our music, the composition as such, melody, rhythm and sahitya are the three basic components of any composition for that matter. So here the first question which came to my mind is whether the melody, rhythm and the sahitya determines the structure of the composition, or whether the structure determines the melody, rhythm and sahitya. This is a very basic question. So obviously the answer here from the compositions of the Trinity is that the structure is what determines how the raga movements will flow, or how the rhythm will flow, or how the sahitya will get molded with the medium of the melody and the rhythm. For this, before we even go into the topic, one classic example I could give you is if you take the ragam Ritigola, for example, and Tyagarajar, where a song like Paripalaya, Paripalaya, in just 2 lines he captures the entire essence of Ritigola. Or Nannu Vidachi, if you take, is a bigger version, a wider gamut of the ragam is displayed. But nevertheless, even that Paripalaya, today we don't have time to sit and sing all that, but all of you are aware of the songs, all are very learned scholars and musicians, where you would say that the Ritigola is no less than what it is in a Nannu Vidachi, because when it comes to capturing a raga through a small structure, Tyagarajar, Dikshidhar or Shama Sastri doesn't come into this category, of course. So where they try to bring out the absolute essentials of the ragam when it becomes a small structure, and when it becomes a middle range structure, it gets expanded further, and it becomes a very large kind of a structure. Then the raga actually expands and blossoms itself to its maximum. And this we see from, like, as I said, a small Durata Kala Kirtana or a Madhyama Kala Kirtana or a Rendigala Kirtana or whatever. The second point I wanted to make here is that we talk about Dikshidhar, Shama Sastri and Tyagarajar as very divine composers, as composers who had a divine outpour and very spiritual, philosophical. Of course, we have to accept all these facts, because I and you can't compose the way they did. But beyond this, I strongly believe that they had a complete understanding of the aesthetics of our music system to be able to compose such a wide variety of structure. Why I'm saying this is because if you look a bit back in history, you will see that the earlier saint composers, the format of the composition was almost similar in terms of, if you take Purandardasa, Annamacharya, Bhadrachala Ramdas, where the whole idea was to use the melody only as a means to convey the sahitya. So there's a radical difference, that is, the difference has to be understood very well for us to also understand why so many structures came about. So where, if you see that Pallavi, multiple charanas, and all the charanas having the same melody, if you take the composition of Annamacharya, Bhadrachala Ramdas, all that, you would see that every charanam has the same melody. So what was the purpose of music was that it was only a means of bhakti, a means of using, melody was used to convey the sahitya. But in the compositions of the Trinity, if we see, this wide variety of structure, I think, is all about the basic understanding of the aesthetics of the system, a deeper understanding of what variety in structure can lend to the music system itself. That is very important for us to understand. So variety in structure, if you look at Tyagaraja, for example, from the simplest to the most complex, in terms of using the same raga for a simple composition at Divyanama or Utsava Sampradaya, to using the same raga to give an expansive treatment. For example, you can take, if you take Madhyamavati, for example, a small kirtana like Nagumomu Galavani, it just has got a Ekadhatu kind of structure. And then if you take Nadupai Balikeru, it's a slightly elaborated structure. If you take Ramakatha Sudha, it becomes more expansive. So what I wanted to share here is that the cognizance of different structures was very much embedded in their mind, and Sriram Parasuram will also talk about that, because of this wide variety of structure is what made them concert worthy, I think. Because if every composition had the same structure, in spite of the melody being different, if it was the same structure, I'm sure that they wouldn't have been adapted and adopted as part of the kacheri also, because of the wide variety of structure is very important here. And coming to the influence, another important thing is that structure was so powerful, the kind of structures that they created through their compositions, they became a role model for all the composers later. So there have been many structures before, but the most popular structures which were given to us by the Tyagaraja, Dikshidhar and Shyama Sastri have become some kind of a role model for Patnam Subramaniam, Mysore Vasudeva Sachar, GNB or Papanashim or whatsoever. Nobody who came after them could say that I was not influenced by the structure of these three composers. So that is the kind of a strong influence they had. Coming to the Tyagaraja first, we will see that he was one person who adopted absolutely, I would say, a wide variety of structures. Even before going into the structure, compositional structure, one point we have to make is about how each one had different structures. Compositional varieties also could be included in this, in the sense that Shyama Sastri composed Geetam, Varnam, Kriti, Swarajati. So these were his forte. Dikshidhar of course composed the Kriti and the Ragamalikas. Tyagaraja, we see that Utsava Sampradaya, Divyanama, the two operas, that is a totally different structural compositional variety he did in Naukacharitaram or Prahalada Bhakti Vijayam. But of course he also created a lot of kritis. Again, there's a, what is a kriti, what is a kirtana, that is another big debate, we need not go into that. Let's keep it as kriti and kirtana. So if you keep it that as the format, we see that Tyagaraja, Dikshidhar and Shyama Sastri, all the three have adopted this kriti as a common format. But the most beautiful aspect here is that though all of them adopted the kriti as one of the common format for composition, each one had their own journey, own path in terms of how they devised the kriti. That is very important. We'll just touch upon a few things. For example, if you take Tyagaraja, the most common format, all of us are well informed, we know that it is the Pallavi, Anupallavi, Charanam, and in the Deshadi composition, Tala composition especially, the tune of the Anupallavi getting repeated verbatim in the latter part of the Charana is a very common kind of a model, and that was followed by many successfully later also. But apart from this, as I mentioned in the composition of Nagumomu Galavani, you see that it was a Ekadhatu, that is one line, that same tune, there is no concept of Pallavi, Anupallavi, Charanam or no segmentation as such. So one tune or the one dhatu gets repeated through the composition. Then of course he also has, apart from this three-part composition of Pallavi, Anupallavi, Charanam that he has devised very successfully. In that, as I mentioned, the repetition of the Anupallavi's tune is one format. But we also see glimpses of the style of Dikshidhar. I mean, this is only in comparison, not that Tyagaraja was influenced by Dikshidhar or anything like that. For our understanding, if you take a composition like Balendu Bhushani in Ritigola, you would see that every segment has got a fresh music in it. Something very similar to what Dikshidhar attempted, because in Dikshidhar's composition, the structure was such that the melody never got repeated. So that concept we can see here. Then we also see the Divyanama, Utsava Sampradaya, where you have the Pallavi and multiple Charanams. So all the Charanams having the repetitive kind of tune, that also he adopted. Then we also see Pallavi and multiple Charanams, where each Charanam has a different dhatu. For example, if you take Broche Varavari and Sri Ranjani, you would see that each one has got a different dhatu in that. Then we also see a very interesting format of the structure where the Charanam becomes an amalgamation of the tune of the Pallavi and Anupallavi. For example, if you take Rama Bhi Rama and Darbar, you would see that the Charanam is nothing but an amalgamation of the dhatu of the Pallavi and the Anupallavi. Or if you take other formats like the Pancharatnam again. Pancharatnam, though we call it a Kriti or Kirtana, I wouldn't call it either, because it is again a coming together of so many elements of a Swarajati, a Varnam, a Kriti, everything put together. It's a unique form by itself that Tyagaraja created. Then coming to the Dikshidars, here also again another point to be mentioned is that as Dr. Radha Venkatachalam was saying, though we may highlight that this person contributed in terms of this, other composers have also done, like for example, if you take the Madhyama Kala Sahitya, though we say that Dikshidhar was a pioneer and every composition had the Madhyama Kala, even Tyagaraja's compositions, we see how he incorporated this Madhyama Kala. For example, if you take Isha Pahimam, in that the whole Charanam itself is in Madhyama Kala.
Even Broche Varevare.
Yeah, for that.
Pallavi itself, we have got it.
Correct.
Both these.
Like this, many examples can be given. I'm just quoting one for trying to relate the whole thing actually. And here again, coming to the Dikshidhar, of course, I'm just literally jumping, I know that, but it's the first phase of our discussion, so just touching upon a few things. In the case of Dikshidhar, we see that here again, one more important thing which I wanted to share is, anything you want to add, man? Here again, one aspect of the structure, very important as far as Tyagaraja is concerned, is of course the element of Sangatis that we have to very importantly make a mention, because the Sangati has also had a very important role in determining how the structure unfolds, the structure of the composition unfolding, we call it unfolding. So that unfolding process happens in a very different way when the Sangatis are many more. So like for example, if you take Eta Unara, where you see that it's a beautiful build-up actually from the Shadja to the Tara, Adhara Shadja to the Tara Shadja, you see that different levels in which the raga is taken to be unfolded. So that's another aspect of the structure which we could talk about. Coming to Dikshidhar, generally we say that his compositions are much more in Chauka Kala and all, but that's a misnomer, because there are also many compositions like Sri Guru Guha or Sri Saraswati which are more in a faster, or I mean again the gate here is a very what we call that, it's a very it cannot be, I mean like Western music we can't say in a quantitative term, but relatively only we can say that this is Durata, this is Madhyama Kala. So that way here again in the structure, the first thing of course which comes to my mind is how Dikshidhar conceptualized his own structure in the Kriti format of not using the same melody repetitively at any point of time. That is something, any composition you take, you would see that whether it's a Pallavi and a Samashti Charanam or a Pallavi, Anupallavi Charanam, whatever it is, you see that every time fresh music becomes a part of the composition. And of course, we all know that the unique structure that he created was a two-part composition. Of course, Sangeeta Sampradaya Shri Subramaniam Dikshidhar does not mention it as Samashti Charanam, which we commonly call now, but trying to make it more understandable as a two-part composition with a Samashti Charanam as we call today. So that was again, I suppose, a structure uniquely contributed by Shri Dikshidhar. And of course here we also should make a mention about his Raga Malikas, which were very unique, the Chaturdasha Raga Malika or the Dashavatara Malika and so on, which had very unique structures in terms of defining the ragam. So the structure here is very important, unlike the other raga malikas where today commonly we see that it's just about the incorporation of a raga name as a mudra within, and then all the names of Meenakshi, Kamakshi, everything coming in. That's the common kind of thing we see now. But this had a very specific purpose. The structure that he created in this Chaturdasha Raga Malika itself is a separate session altogether, but it was a conscious way of creating a structure. That's what I wanted to share again and again, that it's not just about a divine outpour, because when it's a divine outpour, it can be any way and every way, and it can be just at random. Sometimes it may happen as a proper composition or not. But here we can see a conscious way of understanding the structure of each genre and trying to create something out of it. So Chaturdasha Ragamalika again is an ideal example of where you would see the Raga Mudra being incorporated, or how the Chitta Swarams get incorporated, Swara Sahitya get incorporated, Viloma kind of Chitta Swaram happening. So many aspects of the Ragamalika structure have been codified through the way Dikshidhar himself structured this Chaturdasha Ragamalika. And of course, here also again I would like to make a mention about the way Tyagarajar conceived a raga from the simplest to the most complex. We could, it's a very interesting study actually of how one end the Shankarabharanam can be actually thought about as a mere scale, as a note to swarams he did in the 30 note to swarams, where it is just about thinking of the ragam more as a scale and devising melodies for it, to the other extreme of having Akshay Linga Vibho and such beautiful compositions which can really bring out the gamaka element, the nuances, the anuswaras of the ragam to the highest level actually. So coming, this is one aspect, and of course Shyama Sastri, I would like to say that in his forte, of course, in the composition of the structure, the Swarajati stands apart. Again, these Swarajatis have been very different from the others in terms of where you see that even if you take, for example, the Bhairavi Swarajati, it is not just about 8 charanas having the Arona Krama. Every swara, if you take and analyze, you see that it has got every passage of the swara serves a definite purpose in terms of the structure in which it is operating. For example, if you study the first swara passages, you would see that there is a particular range within which the whole thing hovers around, and for example, if you take the third one, the ga, for example, if I take, how many shades of ga can be brought in? These are all not just things which just come spontaneously. I'm sure that there's a lot of thinking process, or rather deep knowledge that is very important to understand this. Or Gandhara, if you take the Swarajati, the third Swaram, different shades of the Gandharam, and again how he has limited himself to certain range of swaras for each of the way he is traversing from sa to the higher sa. So last sa becomes an amalgamation of the whole swaras, and then it's like a round of where you do a raga alapana and the final round you come down like that. But if you observe each of these swara passages, you will see that, and so of course the beginning itself is a revelation where he doesn't even touch the sa at the moment. So it starts off in the Mandar Sai, and coming to the Sa itself is a beautiful process here. You can see that after it touches the Ni, Dha, Pa, and then Da, Ni, and coming to Sa. I mean, this is a very small example, but here again the structure has been very well conceived, I'm sure, because how he has approached that Swarajati, a study will definitely reveal that there has been a very conscious effort in terms of structuring the whole thing. And coming to the other compositions, like we see that in his composition, the structure is another important thing, is like in Tyagarajar, where suppose if you have 2 avartas, you are able to break the 2 avartas and create, for example, Brova Bharama Raghurama, then you can sing Sangatis on that, then Bhuvana Mella, you go to that. But here you see that compositions like Karuna Judu or Himachala Taniya, Himadri, so they have to, the whole structure of that Pallavi has to be completely sung. You cannot really break it anywhere, because it's such that it doesn't fall from Samam to Samam. You can see in Karuna Judu, somewhere here the next, the idea starts, so that way we see that it's a different kind of a structure. That again is a very detailed study. And we see that also here that according to the demands of the raga, the Pallavi lines altogether are complete here. One more final point I would like to share before I wind up this session is that here all the 3 of them, at a peripheral level, the structure may be that of the talam, defining the structure. But every kind of structure that they have created, for example, if you take the Deshadi Tala compositions, it is not about a Ondarada Kirtana, but if you look internally into each of the songs, you will see that there is a definite structure in terms of how there is a pause. The Dhrutam becomes the accent and there is a pause after that. And unanimously, all the compositions, Deshadi, will see that this is featured. Or if you take the Madhyadi Tala composition, you see that it never falls on the Dhrutam. The kind of the Ardi or the emphasis falls before the Dhrutam itself. For example, Rama Katha Sudha, and that Dhrutam becomes a pause point. Or Eta Unara, then the pause comes. Or Yenduku Bedala, pause. So there is a very conscious way of structuring each of the compositions. That's what I wanted to share here. So in summary, I would say that at this juncture that though we have melody, talam and sahityam as the basic components, all the three of them get defined by the structure in which it is put into. It is like, you know, the same liquid getting put into different containers and taking different shapes. That's how it works here, I think, because all of them have also had, like the Hemalatha was telling, many ragas in common, like Shankarabharanam, Kalyani, Todi, Kambodi, everything, you know, is commonly also we see many ragas which have been handled by all the three. But yet they sound different, obviously, because not the raga lakshana is very, very different, especially in case of Shankarabharanam, Kalyani, Todi and all, there cannot be any difference in terms of the lakshana. Maybe the ragas they created, there may be differences. So the whole point is about how the structure which they conceived for each of their compositions is what actually defined the flow of the ragam, defined the flow of the melody. And also the sahityam is very important, because if they wanted to have a structure, you know, where they wanted to bring out the raga to the best, they have used very minimal words. That also you would have seen. And sometimes you see that when the sahitya becomes the focus, then the raga takes a backseat. So these are all very interesting things which happen in a variety fair. That is where, like for example in Divyanama and Utsav Sampradaya, you see that it's more of the repetition of same melody. So where the sahitya becomes the predominant element. Whereas, as I said, in Rendikala Kirtane, or if you take Kamalamba Navavarna, where the sahitya is definitely important because it conveys a lot of lofty meaning. But then you see that, or Oranga Shahi, for example, where there are hardly 2-3 words, but then it is a Kambodi that flows through the whole, that Oranga Shahi Pilachite, and not, and our mind actually goes into the how the movement of that Kambodi happens through that line. Like this, we can mention many compositions where you see that just the 2-3 words, but then the melody takes the course of the whole structure itself. So the three of them have actually paved the way, I would say, in terms of giving us very wide variety of structures, because that was not thought of before. So the wide variety in structure that each of them conceived for us. And I am again wanting to reiterate that it was a very conscious effort, I would say, in terms of creating these structures, and not just some kind of a random divine outpour. They had the highest level of understanding of music in terms of raga, tala, the lakshana, or the structure, or the sahitya, whatever. And that is why probably they were able to give us such a variety fair. Once again, I thank the Music Education Trust, and hopefully in the next round we'll have more thoughts to exchange. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Radhaji. And it was a very enlightening talk, you know, from your side. I would like to appreciate, you know, when she said that, you know, all the composers planned, you know, what they are going to say. She pointed out Chaturdasi Raga Malika, where they have not only incorporated the Raga Mudra, but also given the important phrase of that raga. For example, Sadgati Dayaka Boja Charanena Sadgati Sada Shivam Samaga. And the salient, the important phase of that raga has been established by that composer, you know, in such a short say duration and short length he has established. Then the second thing which I very much enjoyed was, you know, when she said they have given very different kind of structures, and the structures, you know, with multiple charanams, we having, you know, different music, not only, you know, common music, you know, like, you know, which they have given in for the multiple charanams in Madhyamakala Sahityam of Divyanama Kirtanas and Nauka Charitram. all the charanams are having the same music. And one more thing, which when she said Deshadi Talam, I would like to bring to the notice of the listeners that, even in that, Tyagaraja has experimented so many varieties. Very different Kala Pramanams he has employed. For example, Telile Rama or Chera Ravade Mira doesn't fall into the structure of the Raghunayaka or Manasuloni, isn't it? Deshadi Talama irundha kuda adu vera dhaan. Adoda Kala Pramanam vera. One more thing, which I want to point out is, one Kala Pramanam which has not been employed by the other composers like Trinity, like Dikshidhar or Shama Sastri is a Kala Pramanam which he has employed, which has been employed by Tyagaraja, which is not single kalai or a double kalai kirtanas. For example, Lakshana Mulu Gala Shri Ramunike Pradakshina Monarundamu Rare Lakshana Mulu Gala. ரொம்ப அழகான கால பிரமாணம். இது வந்துட்டு மிருதங்கக்காராளுக்கு வாசிக்கிறச்சே தெரியும் அவளுக்கு எவ்வளோ கஷ்டப்படுறாங்கிறது. ஸோ திஸ் இஸ் அ கால பிரமாணம் விச் ஹாஸ் நாட் பீன் எம்ப்ளாய்டு பை ஹிஸ் ஓன் கண்டெம்பரரிஸ். அந்த தேசாதி தாளத்தில் வந்து பண்ணுறதுக்கு ரீசன் என்ன எதான கொஞ்சம் நீங்கள் சொன்னேன்னா வந்துட்டு இன்னும் ஐ திங்க் இட் வில் பி மோர் ஃப்ரூட்ஃபுல். லைக் பிகாஸ் எஸ் இப்போது தேசாதி தாளம் ஈஸிலி even the toddlers can pick up that Kala Pramanam, isn't it? For example, Chera Ravade Mira வந்துட்டு குழந்தைகளால் பாட முடியாது. மருகேரா மாக்கேலரா இதெல்லாம் வந்து பாடிடலாம் பண்டுரீத்தி கோலு. ஸோ இதெல்லாம் வந்துட்டு குழந்தைகள் வந்துட்டு பாடிடலாம். அதனால் வந்துட்டு because he had a large number of disciples. He had to cater to all of them, and he wanted that all the students should know the path of the salvation. They should also be have that thirst to be filled. அவளுக்கும் அந்த பாட்டு வரும், அவளுக்கும் வர்ற லெவலில் பாட்டு வரணும் இல்லையா? அதனால் ப்ராபப்ளி it must have prompted Tyagaraja to have composed that type of composition. And when it comes to the senior persons வந்துட்டு அதை வந்து அதே ஒன்றரை அக்ஷர கீர்த்தனையை வந்துட்டு அவர் வேறு விதமாக எம்ப்ளாய் பண்ணியிருக்கார். அதுவும் it has proved that he has got so many people in mind when he was composing. அதனால் வந்துட்டு I had an interaction with லால்குடி மாமா. உங்களுக்கு மியூசிக் முதல்ல வருமா இல்லை வந்துட்டு சாகித்யம் வருமானு கேட்டிருக்கேன் நான். அவர் எப்போவுமே சொல்லியிருக்கார், ஃபார் தி மியூசிக் ஒன்லி வி கம்போஸ் வேர்ட்ஸ், இட்ஸ் நாட் அதர்வைஸ். ஸோ இவாளுக்கும் வந்துட்டு அதே மாதிரி தான் வந்திருக்கணும். இட் இஸ் நாட் ஸ்பான்டேனியஸ் அவுட் போரிங்காக. இட் மே பி ஸ்பான்டேனியஸ் அவுட் போரிங்காக இருந்ததுன்னு எனக்கு அது சுவாமி வந்து சொல்லி கொடுத்தாரு. எனக்கு பகவான் வந்துட்டு கனவுல சொல்லுவேன் அப்படின்னா அதெல்லாம் அந்த மாதிரி தான் இருக்கும். அது இப்போ நம்ம இப்போ பாடின்னு இருக்க மாட்டோம். பிகாஸ் இட் ஹேஸ் ஹேப்பன்ட் வித் மெனி கம்போசர்ஸ் இஸ்ன்ட் இட். ரொம்ப வந்துட்டு எங்களுக்கு வந்துட்டு சொப்பனத்தில் வந்தது, எங்களுக்கு வந்துட்டு இந்த மாதிரி காம்போசிஷன் பண்ணுங்கன்னு சொல்லிட்டு அவுட் போரிங் இன் தி ட்ரீம். எங்களுக்கு வந்து சாகித்யமே அப்படி வந்தது அப்படின்பா. அது சாகித்யமாக தான் இருக்குமே தவிர்த்து சங்கீதமாக இருக்காது. அதனால் வந்துட்டு ஐ எம் வெரி ஹாப்பி தட் ஷீ ஹைலைட்டட் சச் பாயிண்ட்ஸ் வெரி மச். தேங்க்யூ ராதாஜி. நவ் வி ஹாவ் Mohan Santhanam, who is going to speak upon the Tala aspects by the composer.
Yeah. ஒன்றே ஒன்று மட்டும் சொல்லணும் பிஃபோர் ஐ பிகின். it's not part of my topic, but just to add to what Radha Bhaskar said, இந்த சதுர்தச ராகமாலிகாவில் வந்து அந்த ராகம் டிரான்ஸ்ஃபர்மேஷன் ரொம்ப 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 ரிமார்க்கபிளாக இருக்கும். எஸ்பெஷலி வென் he எனக்கு as I see it, when he moves to when he moves to Shankarabharanam, and then immediately Kamboji follows, and அதுவும் இந்த சங்கராபரணமும் காம்போதியும் ரெண்டும் அரை ஆவர்த்தனம், ஒரு ஃபுல் ஆவர்த்தனம் கூட அந்த சாகித்யத்தில் வராது. So I just wanted to just add to what Radha Bhaskar said, and to the point about எனக்கு அது சொப்பனத்தில் வந்தது, டிஆர்எஸ் எங்கள் வாத்தியார் ஒன்று சொல்லுவார், லிரிக்ஸ் வந்து மியூசிக் தான் சுப்ரீம், லைக் வாட் ராதா மேம் செட். லிரிக்ஸ்னு வந்து நம்ம ரொம்ப அப்படி லிரிக்ஸுக்கு நம்ம இம்பார்ட்டன்ஸ் கொடுத்தோம்னாக்கா நம்ம லிட்ரேச்சர் படிக்கலாம், நம்ம ரொம்ப சாகித்யம். இப்போ ஷியாமா சாஸ்திரியோட இதுவே வந்து ரொம்ப அவர் ஜாஸ்தி ரொம்ப நம்மளுக்கு காம்போசிஷன்ஸ் கிடைக்கல, ஆனால் தாளத்தில் எவ்வளோ பண்ணியிருக்காருங்கிறது ஐ வில் பி டீலிங் வித் இட். பட் ஒரு ஓ கண்ணை தள்ளி காதா அப்படிங்கிறது தான் வந்து ரொம்ப ஐடியாஸ்ன்னு அப்படி இல்லைனாக்க கூட, லைக் ராதா பாஸ்கர் சைட், அந்த மியூசிக் just sort of takes over everything else. ஒரு பாலிஞ்சு காமாட்சியோ ஒரு நின்னு வினாக மரியோ அதை எடுத்துட்டோம்னாக்கா அது we don't really think too much about the lyrics except to just concentrate on the ragam, which Shyama Shastri definitely was இது. And that Bhairavi Swarajati especially, நான் இப்போ தான் கவனித்தேன், அந்த காமாட்சி அந்த அம்பால தான் வந்து அந்த கீழ் ஷட்ஜமே வருது, otherwise it's all மந்திரஸ்தாய். Todi Swarajati completely the first sign is mandrasthai. Okay. My mother was always used to tell her students, Shruti Mata Layam Pita. So rendu Shruti, which is the raga aspect as I see it, and Laya, which is the Tala aspect. Rendu vandu onna serano. So the kinds of talas that the Trinity has handled, nama just konjam brief vandu paakalam. தாளத்தினோட ஃபோக்கஸ் வந்து, ஸோ ஆதி தாளம் இஸ் தி ஆல் என்காம்பஸிங் தாளம், ஸோ விச் இஸ் வை இட் இஸ் கால்ட் ஆதி தாளம். நம்ம ஒரு உலகமே வந்து ஒரு மாதிரி சதுஸ்ரத்தில் ஓடுற மாதிரி தான். சினிமா பாட்டு எடுத்துட்டேன்னாக்கா மேக்ஸிமம் வெதர் இட் இஸ் ஹிந்தி, ஐம் ரெஃபரிங் டு ஹிந்தி மியூசிக், ஹிந்தி ஃபிலிம் மியூசிக் ஒரு தமிழ் ஃபிலிம் மியூசிக், முக்கால்வாசி ஆதி தாளத்தில் தான் இருக்கும். ரேராக அங்கங்கே மிஸ்ர சாப்பு, மிஸ்ர லகு, ஒரு ரூபக தாளம், வெரி ரேர் ரூபக தாளம், அண்ட் ஒரு கண்ட சாப்பு வரத்துக்கு சான்ஸ் இருக்கலாம். ஸோ ஆதி தாளம் ரைட், ப்ரைமாரிட்டியல் தாளம் ஃப்ரம் தி பிகினிங், தீன் தாள் அப்படின்னு ஹிந்துஸ்தானி மியூசிக்கில் சொல்லுவாள். தியாகராஜா predominantly, so the talas which I will be focusing on is Adi Talam, Rupaka Talam, Mishra Chapu, Kanda Chapu, and to a certain, to a lesser extent, Nama Mishra Jhampa, and to a very lesser extent the Alankara Talams, about which I will also talk about. So Tyagaraja எடுத்துட்டோம்னாக்க ஆதி தாளம் ஒரு கலை ரெண்டு கலை, அது வந்து ராதா மேம் ஆல்ரெடி சொன்னா, அந்த ஒரு கலையில் வந்து ஸோ ப்ரிடாமினெட்லி தியாகராஜா ஆதி தாளம் யூஸ் பண்ணியிருக்கார். ஒரு கலை தாளத்தில் ரெண்டு வெரைட்டி இருக்குது, ஐ மீன் ரெண்டு வெரைட்டி இன் டேர்ம்ஸ் ஆஃப் ஸ்ட்ரக்சர். ஒன்று வந்து இந்த கொன்னியாடே நாயடதய வேலகு, அது வந்து சமத்தில் எடுத்து பாடுற மாதிரி, பண்டு ரீதி கோலோவிய வையராம், அந்த ஒன்றரை அக்ஷரம். ஸோ இந்த ஒன்றரை இந்த மாதிரி பாட்டெல்லாம் லைக் இட் வாஸ் ஷி செட், ஒரு சின்ன குழந்தை ஹூஸ் பிகினிங் ஆர் ஈவன் அ பிகினர் கேன் ஈஸிலி sort of accept and sing, can be taught to sing such compositions. அதே இந்த ஒன்றரை அக்ஷர தாளத்தில் சேரராவதி மீரா சொன்னா, you have grander and major compositions like Majanaki. Shripate in Nagaswaravali, Shripate ni pada, அது கொஞ்சம் ஸ்ரீபத்தேன்னு பாடினானாக்கா அந்த ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஆஃப் ஆல் அந்த ராகத்தினோட இம்பேக்ட் அது வருமாங்கிறது கொஸ்டின். அண்ட் அஃப்கோர்ஸ் அந்த நாகஸ்வராவளியோட ஆஸ்பெக்ட், அவர் வந்து ஹவு டிஃப்ரெண்ட் இட் இஸ் ஃப்ரம் அ பகுதாரிங்கிறது வந்து கொஞ்சம் நம்ம ஸ்லைட்லி ஒரு லோவர் காலப்பிரமாணத்தில் பாடினாக்க தான் இந்த நாகஸ்வராவளி வில் ரீச், இஸ் மை ஒப்பீனியன். Cheravade Mira is also a composition in that category. Samakala and the Aditala Urugale வந்து சமத்தில் எடுத்து பாடுறது, which is also considered a reasonably a grand composition, is probably something like an Adamodi Galade. Adamodi Galade. Charukesila வந்து இதை தவிர்த்து ட்ரினிட்டி கம்போஸே பண்ணலை. And of course, Charukesi is a ragam which is a pet peeve of mine. None of the composers seem to have done justice to it, except Swadi Tirunal, who has given us the grand Kripaya Palaya. anyway, that's not the scope of this discussion. So Aditalam Rendikale is where again Tyagaraja has excelled. There are many compositions, grand compositions. Enduku Peddala Etavunara was highlighted by Radha Bhaskar, and then you have the lesser known compositions, relatively lesser known compositions like Yemi Neramu in Shankarabharanam, adukapram vandu Gatini Vani in Todi, நீதய ராவலே காக்க. அது வந்து இந்த சங்கதி ஸ்ட்ரக்சர், அந்த நீதய ராவலே காக்கில் வந்து 2 கலை, அது 12 சங்கதி 13 சங்கதி வரும். தாரணி தெலுசுகொண்டி அண்ட் ஸோ ஆன். Coming to Rupakatalam, interestingly Tyagaraja, I mean probably this is the musician's interpretation. ஒரு கலை ரூபகதாள கீர்த்தனை தான் இருக்குது. Unlike Dikshidhar where the 2 கலை ரூபகம் has been another Aditalam for him in terms of the output that he has created. So Rupakatalathila nariya again you have the very popular Sitama Mayamma, Shobillu Saptaswara, and then you have the slightly lesser known but very beautiful compositions like a Bhakti Bhikshamiyave and Ragaratna Malikache. And that thing about the Yati was very interesting. Adana I have never thought of Tyagaraja's kritis like that. So it's all about the musician's interpretation. That was very interesting. Tyagaraja Kirtanel generally nama Yati na odane Dikshidhar apra and idha vandu namalukku varum. So that was great, thrilling ah irundhathu adu kekradhukku. Then Kandachapu Thalam la vandu we have the very popular Guru Lekha in Gauri Manohari, apra Amma Ravamma, apra and odne and Kandachapula kuda of course musicians interpretation now irukkalam, but Tyagaraja I'll just briefly touch upon. There is a kriti called Prarabdha Mitlundaga in the raga Swaravali. So adula vandu and rendu avardhana Kandachapula and he's given the entire scope of the raga. Prarabdha Mitlundaga urulana oh sorry, that's 4 avardhanams. Samagama Panidani Sa Sanida Magari. So the raga's name is Swaravali. To my knowledge, there வேற ஒன்றும் கீர்த்தனை இருக்கிற மாதிரி தெரியல. I wish people would sing these kind of compositions a little more. So Kandachapu. Mishra Jhampa is interesting because Tyagaraja வந்து very limited compositions. ஒரு கலை Mishra Jhampa தாளத்தில் the very popular Dachuko Valena, which all of us discerning Rasikas know. It's a very popular composition. And Munnu Ravana வந்து எனக்கு வந்து அது 2 கலையில் பாடம். ஸோ 2 கலை மிஸ்ர ஜம்ப இஸ் a bit of a challenge. அந்த 2 தட்டு வரதுனால அது சில சமயம் people might get confused, but it's a very grand composition. There was some debate, இல்லை முன்னு ராவண வந்து ஒரு கலையில் பாடலாமே அப்படின்னு. ஒரு 2 கலையில் பாடினா முன்னு ராவண. ஸோ அது வந்து அந்த கேட் வந்து கொஞ்சம் அதுக்கு ஒரு 2 கலைக்கு பொருத்தமா இருக்குன்னு. That's what I strongly believe in. So I have touched upon the simple kritis and Koniya, then Eduppu. So when it comes to Eduppu, idhula somehow and அரை இடத்துல எடுக்கலாம். Yendaro is very interesting. It seems to be the only kriti, the Sriraga Pancharatnam, இங்கே எடுப்பு. அண்ட் அந்த சரணத்தை வந்து நம்ம பார்த்தோம்னாக்க எல்லாமே இங்கே தான் வந்து முடியும். ஸோ இன்டென்ஷனலாக அது பண்ணியிருக்கணும்னு தான் நான் நினைக்கிறேன். அது வந்து சொப்பனத்தில் அவுட் போரிங்லாம் வந்து ஷுவராக இருக்காது. அண்ட் த கைண்ட் ஆஃப் மியூசிக் தட் ஸ்ரீராக கிருதி ஹேஸ் இஸ் அண்ட் அஃப்கோர்ஸ் இட்ஸ் வித்தவுட் தி தைவதம். அண்ட் சுண்டுவரல் சமத்தில் வந்து அந்த ஒரே ஒரு கீர்த்தனை தான் எனக்கு தெரிஞ்சு இருக்குது. அப்புறம் வாசுதேவாச்சார் has employed the Shunduvaral Samam kritis in his Pranatarthi Hara in Centurity. Of course that's a different talam, but in the Shunduvaral Samam is something which I wanted to highlight, something that Tyagaraja has employed. அப்புறம் வந்து a couple of things in the Kalapramanatha. So Kalapramanamgardu again is a musician's interpretation. So Kuniya Banturiti Kolo, அது வந்து ஒரு விதம். கோரிசே அது வந்து ஒரு மிடில் டெம்போ. அது கொஞ்சம் அந்த கேட் வந்து கொஞ்சம் 2 கலையும் இல்லை, ஒரு கலையும் இல்லை. டிஆர்எஸ் சார் எங்கள் வாத்தியார் வந்து எல்லாம் அந்த ஒரு this concert in Vijayawada where he is accompanied the only concert which is available to us with லால்குடி on the violin, காரக்குடி மணி on the மிருதங்கம். அவர் வந்து சப்மெயின்லாம் இட்டுபாகிய அந்த கண்டச்சாப்புல அதை கண்டச்சாப்போ மிஸ்ர சாப்போ எனக்கு ஞாபகம் இல்லை, மிஸ்ர சாப்பு இல்லை, அதெல்லாம் பாடி நிரவல் சுரம் எல்லாம் பாடி கண்டச்சாப்புவா பந்தூராளி அதை பாடி அவர் நடுவில் வந்து வெறும் கீர்த்தனை பாடியிருக்கார் கோரி சேவிம்பராரில் இந்த கால பிரமாணத்தில். அண்ட் அதில் தனியாக வருதுனா தட்ஸ் இட். And then he's launched onto the Ragam Tanam Pallavi in Mohanam. It's a treat to listen to that concert with Lalgudi on the violin. எதுக்கு சொல்ல வரேன், அந்த காலப்பிரமாணத்தை அந்த ஒரு மாதிரி அந்த ஒன்றரை காலப்பிரமாணத்தை அதை ஹைலைட் பண்ணுறதுக்கோசரம் தான் அவர் பாடினாரோன்னு இஸ் மை இன்டர்பிரிட்டேஷன். 1983 நடந்த கச்சேரி அது. couple of other things. மிஸ்ர சாப்புல நம்மளுக்கு நிறைய தெரியும், தியாகராஜரோடது ஏமி ஜெயசிதே, அப்புறம் எந்துக்கு தயராதுரா, புத்திராது இஸ் இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங் பிகாஸ் when we come to எடுப்பு யூஸ்வலி இங்கே தக்க தீமி அப்படி வந்து எடுக்காமல் புத்திராது. ஸோ அது கொஞ்சம் வித்தியாசமாக இருக்குது. தட்ஸ் ஒன்லி கிருதி which I have seen in தியாகராஜா அண்ட் மிஸ்ர சாப்பு. அது கொஞ்சம் எடுப்பு கொஞ்சம் வித்தியாசமாக இருக்கிறது. லகு, ஸோ மிஸ்ர லகு அண்ட் திஸ்ர லகு. ஸோ பரம பாவன குணசாலி, அதையன் இட்ஸ் ப்ராபப்ளி டிஆர்எஸ்எஸ் இன்டர்பிரிட்டேஷன். ஏன்னா அவர் நம்ம கேட்டிருப்போம், அவர் மானவ ஜென்ம பூர்வீகலனிலாம் அவர் அந்த சூப்பர் ஸ்பீடில் வந்து அதை பாடி அந்த ஒரு நிரவல் பாடி ஸ்வரம் பாடி அந்த அதே மாதிரி இதினிக்கு நியாயமா என் கமனஸ்ரமா. ஸோ அந்த இன்டர்பிரிட்டேஷன் வாஸ் இட் டிஆர்எஸ்எஸ் இன்டர்பிரிட்டேஷன் என்னென்னா அவரை தவிர்த்து வேற இந்த திவ்யநாமம் நான் கேட்டதில்லை. Of course, then you have the Tishra Laghu. So you have Varalila Gana Lola Surapala Sugunajala Bharita Neela Gala Hridalaya Shruti Moola Sukarunala Vala Palaya Shumam. Rumba ஒரு மாதிரி it shows that he was not influenced by the Western music wave that was already coming in the 17th century, but this Divyanamam is a good example of the Tishra Laghu. கண்ட ஏக்கம் வந்து எனக்கு அவர் ஒரே ஒரு வாட்டி தான் ஒன் மோர் திங் விச் ஐ வாண்டட் டு சே வாஸ் இன் தி மிஸ்ர லகு மிஸ்ர சாப்பு. அவர் டிஆர்எஸ் வந்து என்ன பண்ணுவார்னாக்கா மிஸ்ர சாப்பு தாளம் போடுறச்சே அவர் ஒரே ஒரு தட்டு தான் போடுவார் ஃபார் சாங்ஸ் லைக் கிருத்திஸ் லைக் சமயமு தெலிசேன் அசாவேரி அண்ட் பிரொத்து பொய்யனு என் தோடி. அது தக்கிட்ட தக்க திம்மி தக்கிட்ட தக்க திம்மி தக்கிட்ட தக்க திம்மி தக்கிட்ட தக்க அப்படின்னு ஃபுல் சாங்கில் அவர் ஃபுல் கீர்த்தனை பாடச்சு அந்த ஒரே ஒரு தாளம் ஒரே ஒரு பீட் மட்டும்தான் போட்டு பாடுவார். அஃப்கோர்ஸ் அவர் வந்து சொல்லுவார் இந்த மாதிரி வந்து அந்த மியூசிக் ஷுட் ஃப்ளோ வித்தின் த தாளம், நத்திங் ஷுட் பி டெலிபரேட். ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு இன்டர்பிரிட்டேஷன் இந்த ரெண்டு கீர்த்தனையில் வந்து நம்ம பார்க்கலாம். ஹெச்சரிக்ககராரா இஸ் an example where வாத்தியார் வந்து எங்களுக்கு வந்து அதை கண்ட ஏக்கத்தில் சொல்லி கொடுத்தார். there are versions where there are people sing it in கண்ட சாப்பு also, but அந்த அதுவும் ஒரு சுண்டு விரல் சமமோட எக்ஸாம்பிள். ஹெச்சரிக்ககராரா அப்படி வந்து ஃபுல்லாக அந்த இது நீ அப்படி போட்டு பாடு ஸ்வரம் பாடு அப்படின்னார். ஓகே அப்படின்னு சொல்லியிருக்க. ஆதிதாள ரெண்டுகளை கீர்த்தனையில் there are actually smaller songs like ராகசுதாரச எல்லாம் ரெண்டு லைன் தான். although அது ஒரு ஆதிதாள ரெண்டு கலையில் அந்த தி ஆந்தோலிகாஸ் brought out beautifully. one more example is நீதேயச்சே in Yadukula Kamboji, where again ரெண்டு லைன் தான். அது பிஃபோர் யூ அது வரமிருது பாஷன்னு வந்து இந்த சரணம் ஆரம்பிக்கும். வில் திங்க் தட் ஓகே லெட்ஸ் கெட் ப்ரிப்பேர்ட் ஃபார் அ லாங் சரணம்னாக்கா ரெண்டாவது லைனில் the கிருதி இஸ் ஓவர். ஸோ இட்ஸ் அ வெரி அன்யூஷுவல் ஆதிதாள ரெண்டுகளை கிருதி brought out by தியாகராஜா. தீக்ஷிதர், ஸோ ஆதிதாளம் அகேன் ரெண்டுகளை கீர்த்தனை பாலகோபால சதாசிவம் வாஸ்மஹே ஸ்ரீராஜகோபால மீனாட்சி மேமதம் அஃப்கோர்ஸ் எல்லாமே சமத்தில் ஆரம்பித்து people have already spoken about the structure and the language. ஒருகளை கீர்த்தனை ஷடானனே சுப்ரமணியன, ஷடானனே is in கமாஸ், சுப்ரமணியன is in சுததன்யாசி, ஆனந்தாமிருத கர்ஷினி in அமிருத வர்ஷினி. Mishra Chapu, of course, there is always this debate. People have said that Mishra Chapu is a rationalization of the 20th century. Dikshidhar only sang Tripuratalam abdinna. I don't know, because அந்த காலத்துல வந்து நம்ம தீக்ஷிதர் எப்படி பாடினார்னு unfortunately we don't have that kind of audio documentation, so we don't know. But Mishra Chapun pata, you have the Ananda Bhairavi Navavarnam, Akshayalinga Vibho, Bhajare Re Chitta, Mama Meenakshi. Kanda Chapula Dikshidhar create Pannara. எனக்கு வந்து when I was looking through Sundaramaiar's books, researching for this, ஒரே ஒரு கீர்த்தனை மட்டும் போட்டிருக்கு, மகிஷாசுரமர்தினி கௌள. நான் அது கேட்டதில்லை. அது கண்ட சாப்புன்னு போட்டிருக்கு. ஸ்ரீதும் துர்கே இன் ஸ்ரீரஞ்சனி, அதை வந்து அவ அதில் அந்த இந்த மகிஷாசுரமர்தினி கௌளை வந்து கண்ட சாப்புன்னு தான் போட்டிருக்கு. பட் யார் பாடியோடதும் ரெஃபரன்ஸ் இல்லை. நீங்கள் பாடியிருக்கீங்களா யாராவது? ஓகே, ஸோ அது ரெஃபரன்ஸ் எனக்கு இல்லை. இதுதான் இல்லையா? ஓகே. ஸோ இப்போ ஸ்ரீதும் துர்கே நான் வந்து வித்வான்கள் கண்ட சாப்புல பாடி கேட்டிருக்கேன், வாசிச்சும் கேட்டிருக்கேன். But somehow and I mean, to me, maybe it's a preconceived notion, or maybe I already feel that Dikshidhar is this way. And the Khanda Chapula Padina avlo nanna illiyo abdinnu. So Sridhum Durge definitely should be sung in Khanda Ekam, and it's in my opinion one of the most beautiful Sriranjanis. அது வந்து இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் வெளியில வரணும் அப்படின்னு என்னோட ஒரு ஆசை. அதுவும் இந்த வே he has included the Raga Mudra and all that. I don't want to tread into that territory. Okay, Rupakatalam. So before I go into Rupakatalam, Dikshidhar, what the kind of enormous and phenomenal thought that he has employed into his kritis and come out and successfully, and kritis which are still being sung and performed today. So இந்த அலங்கார தாளத்தை வந்து அவர் ஃபுல்லா அந்த வாரக்கிருதியில யூஸ் பண்ணியிருக்கார். So what do I mean by varakruti? I'm not saying navagraha kriti because I'm not including the kritis on Rahu and Ketu in my either. There is a lot of debate as to those kritis being spurious, so I'm not considering those for our discussion today. But in the Varakriti, Sunday to Saturday, so Sunday begins with Dhruvatalam. Surya Murtha is in Dhruvatalam, Chandram Bhajamanas in Matyatalam, Angarakam in Rupakatam, Buddhamashriya in Jampa, Brihaspati in Tripurtalam, Sri Shukra Bhagavanth in Attatalam, and he rounds off with Divakara Janajam in Ekatalam. Divakara Janajathala வந்து என்னன்னா அது ஆதி தாளமா பாடலாமா அப்படிங்கிறது ஏன்னா முடியாது. ஏன்னா திவாகர தனுஜமனோட பல்லவியே it stretches to 5 ஆவர்த்தனம்ஸ். So it's not a symmetrical 2, 4, 6, 8 kind of a number. So you are forced to sing it in Ekatalam only. So Dikshidhar and Varakritis are being very much in vogue today, and Atatalathila வந்து he seems to have had a field day. He's composed the Kamboji Navavarnam, which we were fortunate enough to learn from D.K. Jaraman directly just before he passed away. அது Atatalathila ரெண்டு கலையில அவர் எங்களுக்கு சொல்லி கொடுத்தார். ஸோ அதை இன்டர்னலைஸ் பண்ணுறதுக்கு கொஞ்சம் டைம் ஆச்சு. பட் the output has been beautiful. Then there are ஒருக்கலை தாளம், அட்டத்தாளம் ஒருக்கலையில் he has again given us Kamboji Sri Valmika Lingamnu ரொம்ப அழகான கீர்த்தனை, again on Thiruvarur. Sri Shukra Bhagavantham, of course. Triputta தாளத்தில் வந்து அவர் அபயாம்பா சஹானா நவாவர்ணம், இன்ஃபேக்ட் அந்த சஹானா நவாவர்ணம் அது ரெண்டு பேரும் அவள் ரெண்டு விதமாக பாடுறா. ஒரு கலையிலையும் பாடுறா, ரெண்டு கலையிலையும் பாடுறா. நாங்கள் ரெண்டு கலையில் தான் கற்றுனோம். அகெயின் தேங்க்ஸ் டு தி ஒர்க் ஷாப் அரேஞ்ச்ட் பை our Guru TRS in bringing DKJ in 1990. அது நாங்கள் ரெண்டு கலையில் பாடுறோம். அண்ட் தென் தெர் இஸ் ஆர்யாம் அபயாம்பாம் இன் பைரவி இன் திரிபுட்டுத்தாளம். திரிபுட்டுத்தாளம் நம்ம கொஞ்சம் அதை ஸ்லோவாக காலப்பிரமாணம் அகெயின் அது ஸ்லோவாக பண்ணி பாடினானாக்கா நான் எது ஆர்யாம் அபயாம்பாமா அடுத்தாளமா? ஓகே, இன்னும் திரிபுட்டு என்ன நான் தேங்க்ஸ் ஃபார் த correction. So Saptatalas, and coming to Rupakatala Rendigala. So what did Dikshidhar see in Rupakatala Rendigala that he has given us so much of his, such a lot of his many beautiful compositions. The Dhyana Kirtana begins with the Rupakatalam Rendigala. The Punnagavarali Navavarnam again is Rupakatala Rendigala, and the magnum opus, the crowning glory of the Navavarnam, where he has employed all the Vibhaktis, which is the Ahiri Navavarnam. That's one of the நிஜமாவே ஒரு ஒன் ஆஃப் த கிரேட்டஸ்ட் மாஸ்டர் பீசஸ் ஆஃப் கர்நாடிக் மியூசிக்னு சொல்லுவேன். அதுவும் அவர் ரூபக தாளத்தில் தான் போட்டிருக்கார். சுப்பிரமணியாய நமஸ்தே அகைன் ரூபக தாளம் 2 கலை. அதில் வந்து டு ஒன் பாயிண்ட் ஆஃப் வாட் வாஸ் மென்ஷன் பிஃபோர், அந்த இன்ஃபேக்ட் இது வந்து ஸ்ரீ அந்த நமஸ்தேங்கிறது வந்து இங்கே தான் வந்து முடியும். ஜென்ரலி வந்து நம்ம பாடுறச்சே we will expect the namaste to come and end at the aridi, which is at the, அவர் வந்து இங்கே முடிப்பார். அவர் இன்டென்ஷனலி அவர் அப்படி பண்ணியிருக்காருன்னு, I mean when we were like 15-16 when TRS was teaching us, அப்போ வந்து அவர் சொன்னது. ஸோ நீங்கள் to your point அந்த எடுப்பு அந்த மாதிரிலாம் இது வந்து ரொம்ப தாட்ஃபுல்லாக அவர் பண்ணியிருக்காரு அப்படின்னு. கம்மிங் டு ஷியாமா சாஸ்திரி ஜென்ரல் இது வந்து என்னென்னா, இல்லை அவர் ஸ்வரஜதி பண்ணியிருக்கார், கார்பஸ் வந்து ரொம்ப கம்மி அதெல்லாம் சொல்லியிருக்கோம். பட் when I was looking at his creations for this discussion, he is a தாளா researcher's delight. அவர் வந்து பயங்கரமாக பண்ணியிருக்காரு. எனக்கு பாதி தெரியவே தெரியாது. ஆதி தாளம் சரோஜலி நேத்ரி, ஆதி தாளம் 2 கலை, பாலிஞ்சு காமாட்சி, தோடி ஸ்வரஜதி எக்ஸெட்ரா. He's a when it comes to Adi Tala Tishragati, we immediately think of Kriti like Shankari Shankuru, and அவர் வந்து அது அப்புறம் பார்வதி நின்னோ அப்படின்னு வந்து சங்கர் பண்ணியிருக்கார் in Kalgada. கருணாநிதி இல்லலோ which has recently become a little more popular in Todi. தியாகராஜரும் வந்து ஆதிதாளம் திஸ்ரகதி பண்ணியிருக்கார், which I forgot to mention. There are kritis like Ramani Vadu Konduvo in Kalyani and Gattiganu Nanu in Begada, which are sung in again it's a matter of musicians interpretation நான் நினைக்கிறேன். பிகாஸ் சுஜன ஜீவனாவே எங்களுக்கு டிஆர்எஸ் சார் வந்து திஸ்ர நடையில தான் சொல்லி கொடுத்தாரு.
எல்லா ரூபக தாளம் வந்துட்டு
கரெக்ட்
ஆதி தாளம் சிசர்கத்தில் பாட முடியாது. மிருதங்க வாசிக்கிறவளுக்கு கேட்டோம்னா தெரியும், இதுக்கு வாசிக்கிறதுக்கும் அதுக்கு வாசிக்கிறதுக்கும் வெரி டிஃப்ரெண்ட்.
ஸோ இட்ஸ் ஸோ இப்போ ஹிமாத்ரி சுத்தை நம்ம எடுத்துட்டோம்னாக்கா 2வது தட்டில் ஆரம்பிக்கிறது, விச் இஸ் அகைன் வெரி வெரி அன்யூஷுவல். ரூபக தாளத்தில் 2வது தட்டில் ஆரம்பிக்கிற பாட்டு வந்து வேற என்ன பாட்டுன்னு வந்து எனக்கு தெரிஞ்சு இல்லை. பட் வித்வான்ஸ் லைக் நேதுநூரி அண்ட் ஆல் ஹவ் சங் ஹிமாத்ரி சுத்தை இன் ஆதிதாளம் திஸ்ரகதி. லால்குடி வாசிச்சு 2 பேரும் பூந்து விளையாடிருக்காங்க. தட்ஸ் a different subject altogether. Then the talas that Tishra Triputa, coming to Shyama Shastri, Tishra Triputa, Neelayakshi, Geetam, Saverila Geetam, Adinanunchi, in Adinanunminchi, Ananda Perivi, Palaya Sumam and Arabi. Mishra Chapu, of course, Elargun Teriyu, Ninne Naminano, Trilokamata, Atita Edip, Nannu Brova Lalita, Talli Ninnu Nera, Ninnu Vina, அதெல்லாம் வந்து நார்மல் எடுப்பில் இல்லாமல் கொஞ்சம் அதீதமாக Ninnu Vina, and then Hyderabad brothers I've said Ninnu Vina. So again it's a question of musicians interpretation. Adu eppadiya? Okay. Okay. அதுக்கப்புறம் வந்து நன்னு ப்ரோவலலிதா வந்து கிட்டத்தக்க நன்னு அந்த மாதிரி அங்கே அந்த தட்டில் ஆரம்பித்து தள்ளி நின்று நேரமும் அந்த மாதிரி தான் ஆரம்பிக்கும். Then coming to his other talams, he has used talams like Khandamatyam, Parvati Jananin வந்து Bhairavi Geetam. Then Tishramatyam, there is a kriti called Brihannayaki in Madhimavati. Tishramatyam, there is a Varnam in Kalyani which Rajeshwari is planning to sing in the festival this time. So Kalyani, அதுவும் Tishramatyam தாளம், அது I don't know how Shyama Shastri would have conceived of it. ஃபுல் ஜம்ப தாளம் வந்து ராவே பர்வத ராஜகுமாரி அது இருக்குது. அண்ட் அட்டத்தாளத்தில் அவர் கம்போஸ் பண்ணாரா? ஆமாம், கம்போஸ் பண்ணியிருக்கார். தெர் இஸ் அ கிருதி இன் கல்யாணி கால் சங்கரி சங்கரி கருணாகரி அப்படின்னு. ஸோ ஷியாமா சாஸ்திரி கார்பஸ் வந்து கம்மியாக இருந்தாலும் the number of talams that he has employed was a surprise definitely to me when I was looking at his compositions in it. The Dikshidhar Rande seems to be a blend of both, and Tyagaraja has had his own style. So 3 different styles, 3 different supernatural, superlative musicians, superlative composers that we have been fortunate to learn and practice and talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohan. Both Radhaji and as well as Mohan pointed out that வந்துட்டு அவள் வந்துட்டு இதில் வந்துட்டு இதில் அரை இடத்துல ரூபத ஆதி தாளத்தில் அரை இடத்துல வந்துட்டு அவள் வந்து ஒரு சிலபிள் வரா மாதிரி வச்சுருக்கா. அதுக்கு ரீசன் என்னன்னு ஒரு அனலைஸ் பண்ணோம்னா, அந்த காலத்தில் வந்துட்டு ஒன்லி பல்லவி எக்ஸ்போசிஷன் வேர் கன்சிடர் ஃபார் காம்படிஷன்ஸ். பல்லவிங்கிறதுக்கு அந்த பல்லவிக்கும் இந்த பல்லவிக்கும் டிஃப்ரென்ஸ் இருக்கணும். ஏன்னா அந்த பல்லவியில் அறுதி வந்துட்டு சம்வேர் ஆன் தி பீட் ஃபாலோட் பை அ பாஸ் அப்படி தான் இருந்துட்டு. எந்த ட்ரெடிஷ்னல் பல்லவி நம்ம எடுத்தாலும் கூட அந்த மாதிரி தான் இருந்தது. எல்லாம் வந்து அறுதி வந்துட்டு கரெக்டாக வந்து சமத்தில் வந்து விழும். இவா வந்துட்டு தியாகராஜா மஸ்ட் ஹவ் தாட் தட் மை பல்லவி ஷுட் பி டிஃப்ரெண்ட் அப்படின்னா அந்த எல்லா இதில் அரை இடத்துல கொண்டு வந்து அழகாக கொண்டு வந்துருக்கார். ஜக அப்படின்னு அந்த மாதிரி வந்துட்டு அவர் வந்துட்டு அது மாத்திரம் நாட் ஓன்லி இந்த பூர்வாங்கம் உத்தராங்கத்துலேயும் அதே மாதிரி ஹி ஹேஸ் மெயின்டைன்ட் இட். அது வந்துட்டு எல்லா காம்போசிஷன்லேயும் வந்துட்டு தட் ஹிஸ் பல்லவி ஷுட் பி டிஃப்ரெண்ட் ஃப்ரம் தி பல்லவி விச் பீங் ப்ரெசன்டட் இன் தி ராயல் கோர்ட்டில். அது காம்படிஷனாக வச்சுட்டு பண்ணுறச்சே இருக்கிறத வந்துட்டு அதுலேருந்து அது வந்துட்டு இட் ஷுட் பி டிஃப்ரெண்ட்டுங்கிறத வந்துட்டு ஹி ஹேஸ் ப்ரூவ்ட் த்ரூ ஹிஸ் காம்போசிஷன்ஸ். I am very happy that she is pointed it out, and also it was again pointed out by Mohan. Thank you, Mohan. Now we are going to have with Dr. Vijayalakshmy Subramaniam, who is going to talk on the rasa and bhava aspects found in the compositions of the Trinity.
Ellarku namaskaram. The audio level is okay? Yeah. So we've heard a lot of very wonderful details about various aspects of the compositions of the Trinity. Now we come to a very, very different aspect of music. I will be speaking about the rasa bhava of the compositions. Now bhava or rasam is probably the most intangible aspect of music which defies description. It is an experience which is specific to each person, and to vocalize it, I think, is not an easy task. One may say that it is the first impact of a song that we hear before the mind actually kicks in and processes details like raga or tala or language. These are perceptions of the mind and intellect, but rasa is that aspect which caresses one's heart before the mind actually kicks in. So in the context of Carnatic music, we find an instant appeal in the compositions of the most uttama of the Vagyakaras that we have been discussing today, the Trinity. The significant reason for this, in my opinion, is the fact that they were great bhaktas finding expression for their devotion through the medium of music. Music to them was a vibrant vehicle of expression appealing to the mind and the heart. Now, Saint Tyagaraja is venerated as Nada Yogi, as he worshipped Lord Rama, his Ishtadevata, as an embodiment of Nada, and Nada itself was an embodiment of the Vedas. And he says the nectar of Nada has taken human form as Rama. Since we're talking about bhava, I would just like to sing little snippets for us to understand, because bhava is something that one feels, and it's not that one can completely speak about. Nada sudharasam bilanu narakriti ye manasa nada sudha narakriti aye. So he worships Rama as the embodiment of nada. He also sings that in Rama is the full significance of Gita or Vedanta and Sangeetam, which is Anandam or bliss. Tambura jasti irka. Geetarthamu Sangeetanandamu. Geetarthamu Sangeetanandam. So, Tyagaraja basically shares the bliss of his bhakti through his compositions. Because he believed in the value of music as a margam to mukti, he sang joyously any number of ragas, talas, edupas, structural varieties, themes, etc. But essentially, it was music that was his devotion. This is the common thread that we see in the compositions of the Trinity. Absolute faith in musical expression along with Sahitya. If not, Sahasranamam pannirkalam, bhajana pannirkalam, why have so much of musical expression to communicate these thoughts? So I think that is a very, very important aspect to consider when we look at the compositions of the Trinity. Tyagaraja expresses his extreme closeness to Rama in numerous songs. First person la address pandra nariya edathula. Nee dayarada nera kekara un daya varada enakku. And you can see that. Again, we have heard stories about how he had a not very harmonious relationship with his brother. Nadhupai palikeru narulu. He's talking to Sri Rama. And then he expresses joy. Nadachi vachiti vo nanu palimpa. He's overwhelmed with joy when he sees Valajapet Venkataramana Bhagavatar walking towards him with the portrait of Sri Rama. He's overwhelmed. He said, Nadachi vachiti vo. So these are the kind of musical expressions we see which move beyond the expression of Sahitya. In Ye Paniko Janmichitinani, he says he firmly believes that he was born to describe the glory of Rama. And he also believes that it is music that gives mukti. And he says in Sita Vara Sangeeta Jnanamu, Adu Brahma Talela Ezhudirnda Adhan Jnanam Varum. He says it has to be written on one's forehead by God, that you have to be blessed by Brahma to have Sangeeta Jnanamu. Again and again, he sings of the importance of music. Nabhi Hritkantharasana. He's talking about how music comes forth. And he sings this in so many songs. Prananala samyogamuval. Prana, anala, sam. Rendu chendu, it creates the sound, the output. Nedura nirakarinchi muddugatam burapeti shuddhamaina manasu che suswaramu to. Tyagaraja expresses himself as a Nada Yogi, a dasa of Lord Rama essentially, though he has sung a few compositions in praise of other devotees. The Niddura Nirakarinchi Padache, I am reminded of TRS sir. Suswaramu tonu varum. Sir, andarthiliyadu suswarama padano, abaswarama padapadu. Now we find, when we look at the compositions of Shri Muthuswami Dikshitar, who was the youngest of the Trinity and the most short-lived of the three, he achieves the incredible task of expressing Advaita philosophy through his music. Now, when we say Advaita philosophy, this is not devoid of bhakti. This is a very elevated aspect of bhakti. He with his distinctive style of predominantly Sanskrit Sahitya and different structural sophistications that we heard about, he expresses deep Vedantic thought and elevated concepts in a most accessible manner. See, listening to Vedanta might be beyond the scope of many average people, but when you listen to these concepts which are given to you so beautifully through music, you're able to understand and go beyond. A great Mahavakya, he says, Aham Brahmasmi. He expresses it beautifully and simply without any frills in a very matter-of-fact manner, as if to say, I'm stating what it is. Anandeshware samrakshitokam nityananda Rupamosmi Brahmananda Rupamosmi. So the beauty of Dikshidhar Kritis is that those who know the Sanskrit language can completely enjoy the deep philosophical thought. Those who don't know Sanskrit at all can enjoy the melody, the raga, the way he expresses it. Those who don't know both can just listen to the sound of it and enjoy the sheer sound of it. Dikshidhar again believes in the power of music and expresses this in many songs because Devi is always a Sangeeta Priya. Shankarya Shri Karya Sangeeta Rasike. He sings this in any number of songs. Geeta Vadya Vinodini Girijam Tamindiram. Mohan was mentioning Dundubi Vadya, Shri Dumdurge. Dundubi Vadya Vedanada Vinodini Modini Veenavadini Samvedini Avedini. He uses so many patterns that mesmerizes. Again, in Dum Durge we have Guru Guhodaye Vijaye Sadaye Abhaye Sarasamaye Shat Samaye Samaye Kalaye Shri. See, these may be using the Sahityam, but like I think one of the previous speakers mentioned it, music is the vehicle, the musical expression is the vehicle to communicate here. And of course, Tyagaraja Yoga Vaibhavam, all of us have known it. We have heard that example many times. Now, you can also see why they are called Uttama Vagayakaras when you find a complete marriage, a complete harmony of the Sahityam and the music. Pavanatmajagacha. Madhyama Kalatla he sings. Abhirupamani bhushari pujaya bala visesha japa samadhya bhilasha aparimita santosha pavanatmaja. Pavanatmaja, he's singing about Anjaneya here. He's singing about a monkey. And he says, aparimita santosha. Korang enna pannu when it's happy. It jumps in ecstasy, right? So which is reflected so beautifully in the music here. Aparimita santosha pavana. These are all examples of musical expression. Then again, Muraghara nagadhara sarasija parama purusha pavana jashubhakara. So you see the gate, the grandeur, the tenor of the song changes when he's singing about Narasimha. Again, the marriage of the Sahityam and Shita Kiranani Bhavadana Shita Chintamani Sadanam Pitavanam Guru Hamatulakantam Lalitam Hiran. The Lalitangra word eppadi use பண்றார் அவர். Shita Chintamani Sadanam Pitavanam Guru Amatulakantam Lalitam Hiran. Such an amount of sweetness and gentleness in that. See, even the choice of Srinathadi is a musical expression because he has conveyed the entire gamut of our pedagogy here. Sarali Varsa, Kirkalam, Madhyamakalam, Mel Kalam, and then all the varises, the patterns. This could have been done in any song, any ragam. But the fact that he opted to do this in Maya Malagole, which is our traditional ragam of learning music. Srinathadi Guru Guho Jayati Jayati Sare Gama Padanisa Sanidha Bagarisa. Beautifully, he brings in the entire system of our learning of music. Now, we are familiar with the devotee calling out to the deity, Ishvara, Swami, Devi, Amba, and asking him or her to come soon and to deliver one from this samsara. There is one composition of Dikshitar which is distinctly different in the kind of sahityam and expression and music. In this composition, he says, Devi, please go away from me. Please do not disturb me when you are in the form of Maya or Avidya. Maya tvam yahi mambadhitum kahi. Mambadhitum kahi. Do not disturb me. Tvam yahi. Please go away. And it's very different in the tenor of Sahityam, and we have not heard anybody else sing to any god saying, please leave me, go away. Ajnanama aranda, avidya aranda, please leave me. And in a composition like this, he brings in so many beautiful patterns. Sarasa kaye rasa kaye sakaye aye Maye Tvam Yahi. Again, here I think the musical expression for this composition is more suited to the Shuddha Devata rendition as it is given in the Sampradaya Pradarshini. So, Tarangini is given as a janya of Charukesi, but it has been popularized hugely as a janya of Harikampuji, where it 26 raganga. Right. As we understand it today, it is say the notes from Charukesi. Nidasa. So this is again a musical expression. When you ask somebody to go away, it is with, he's hurt and he's saying, that is the kind of feeling that comes through. I would just like to say that, and here again he says, you manifest as music and you're extolled by it. Gaye, gaye. These are very, very deeply philosophical thoughts, aspects, concepts of things like Triputi, which Dikshita just gives it to us in such a beautiful manner where you don't need to know any of this. And Dikshita again, he extols the Devi as an embodiment of music. Bhavaragataala modini bhakta bhishta pradayini sevaka jana palana guru guha rupamuttu kumara janani. He says, you are my janani and you are bhavaragataala modini. As a musician, I would just like to say that I find some of these kritis fill me up so completely. It's just that you want to enjoy silence after that. And it's amazing how, within the framework of Carnatic music, these three Vagyakaras have used the medium of musical expression so uniquely and carved an immortal space for themselves. Shyama Shastri, as they said, has almost exclusively worshipped the mother goddess as Talli or Sahodari. Is it surprising at all that his compositions are so emotive when we know that Parashakti herself referred to him as Anna? Shyama Shastri's compositions are again distinctly different with a personality of their own. In terms of sheer number of songs, like Mohan pointed out, songs, ragas, or even themes, he is the most conservative among the Trinity. Now, if he occupies space along with Dikshitar or Tyagaraja despite this, doesn't it speak volumes for the sheer power and impact of his compositions? Every song is replete with bhava. It is as if he is sitting in her very presence and having a personal conversations. He places absolute faith in Devi and repeatedly invokes her through names such as Talli, Amma, Bhavani, Pavani, Shankari, Kalyani, Kamakshi, Katyayani, and so on. And he repeatedly says, Nammiti, Nammiti, Brovumu, you're my only refuge. This is a repeated bhava. In fact, more or less, this is the only emotion that he expresses. But he does it so intimately and with such force of conviction that it is like an emotional tsunami that just sweeps us in its stride. Padapangkajamula sthiramani nammiti sthiramani nammiti. Again, you see in a composition like O Jagadamba, where it's almost like he is in her presence. How does he sing the composition? He says, O, 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 Jagat. See the span of the O. He starts, it's like calling somebody who's very far away. Then you're a little closer, so it's a slightly smaller O. And then you're very close, so it's an even smaller O. O, O, Jagadam. Why would you not feel her presence? Again and again, that is the expression that he says. Tamasa mele rave. Please don't delay. Vegamava, tamasa mele rave. Please come at the earliest. So we as Rasikas, I think we are fortunate to have access to these beautiful and truly divine expressions of devotion. We have discussed this aspect here. I think it's a little irrelevant to discuss whether it is human in the effort on their part or how it is that they could compose such music. Because when we say divinity, I don't think it means you're sitting like a statue and the music is just flowing through you. I think you are endowed, okay, scientists may call it a unique combination of genes or whatever you would like to say it. But we in our culture, we believe that it is your sukritam that enables you to even have a whiff of Carnatic music, or the Tyagaraja says, if you don't have the Taleriti, you just don't have it. So I firmly believe that it is definitely the hand of divinity which has touched these great Vagyakaras, and it has enabled them to give their outpouring in this measure. So one is not taking away their effort, one is not taking away their capability, but all this, we have so much of evidence of great musicians who have not made it big as concert artists, or who are not popular. What do we say? So what is that? What is a talelithu? I think it's a very, very undefinable aspect which we call as divinity, or we say this is divine blessings, and I personally feel there can be no two opinions of this. The Bhagavatam says, Muhuraho rasikaha bhuvi bhavukaha. Go on drinking this divine nectar again and again till there is consciousness left in you. Thank you.
The rasa aspect was the topic of Dr. Vijayalakshmy. Here, when we study the compositions, the language plays a very important role. The spoken language has got more facility to express the rasas and bhavas, because every day we are speaking that language. Sanskrit has got its own limitation. In that, if somebody has achieved some level, I really appreciate it, and for that matter, I appreciate Mutswami Dikshithar, because he was also, when he wanted to express the spirit of Narasimha, used the rakaram so fluently. Murakara nakadara sarasi jakara parama purusha pavana jashubakar suruchira kara giri varada vichara sarasa guru gukar hridaya sagachara narasimhan அப்படி அடிக்கிற மாதிரி அந்த நரசிம்மர் வர்ற மாதிரி வந்துட்டு சாகித்யத்தை கொண்டு வந்தார். He has also resorted to the Sahityam portion, in that he has brought the rakaram to show the anger of Narasimha. Tyagarajarku வந்துட்டு, because it was a spoken language, and he was not வந்துட்டு அவர் ரொம்ப அழகாக வந்துட்டு, and in his case, he has chosen the raga, to express the words, For example, Kanu kontini Sriramuni nedu kanularana Kamitambutira kanu அப்படின்னு சொன்னவர் வந்துட்டு, when it comes to philosophy, he has expressed, chosen a very beautiful Brahmanikamu poye నీచుల బ్రతుకాయే ఈ కలిలో பிராமணிகமோ போயே. 250 இயர்ஸ்க்கு முன்னாலே அவர் வந்துட்டு இந்த மாதிரி எக்ஸ்பிரஸ் பண்ணியிருக்கார். பிராமணிக்கமும் போயே நீ chosen Mukhari is so suitable for the சாகித்யம் போர்ஷன். ஸோ அவருக்கு வந்துட்டு இந்த பாட்டுக்கு வந்துட்டு சாகித்யம் முன்னால் வந்துட்டு அதுக்கு வந்துட்டு அவர் he must have chosen அப்படின்னு தோன்றுறது. when I was learning this song itself, I was சங்கீத சாஸ்திர, அதில் வந்துட்டு அந்த முக்காரி ராகத்தை வந்து அதுக்குள்ள அந்த சாகித்யம் வந்துட்டு it has been so beautiful. Similarly வந்துட்டு முக்காரியை வந்துட்டு he has used ఈడులేని మలయ మారుతముచే కూడిన కావేరి తటమందు ఈడులేని, அதை வந்துட்டு அந்த அதுக்கு ஈடு இல்லை அப்படின்னு சொல்கிறாரு. அந்த ராகம் வந்துட்டு இஸ் ஸோ சூட்டபிளி ஓவன் ஃபார் தட் சாகித்யம் ஐ ஃபீல். ஸோ அதனால் வந்துட்டு இது வந்துட்டு அவளுக்கு அந்த கல்பனை தோன்றச்சா அந்த கல்பனைக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி ராகமும் தோணியிருக்கு. அதனால் வந்துட்டு நம்ம வந்துட்டு வி ஹாவ் டு அப்ரிஷியேட். இந்த டாப்பிக்கில் பேசுகிறதுக்கு நிறைய விஷயங்கள் இருக்குது. அதனால் வந்துட்டு வி ஆர் கம்மிங் டு தி க்ளோசிங் பார்ட் ஆஃப் தி panelist. Sriram Parasuram will give us will enlighten us on a concert worthiness of the compositions of the musical Trinity. In the case of Shyama Shastri, it was only pathos. And the pathosla vandu he has used very limited number of words. ஒரு தெலுங்குன்னு எடுத்துட்டோம்னா ஒரு 50 வேர்டுக்கு மேலே தேராது அவரோட பாட்டில் இருக்குது அவைலபிள் கீர்த்தனாஸில். தள்ளி காதா பிட்ட காதா நான் சோதரி நீ சோதரி அப்படின்னு கிருஷ்ண சோதரி நீ தேவி மாதிரி தான் யூஸ் பண்ணியிருக்காரு தவிர பாக்கியெல்லாம் வந்துட்டு ரொம்ப whenever he wanted he inserted the names of the goddess. அதை வந்துட்டு இன்சர்ட் பண்ணி அதுக்கு வந்துட்டு தள்ளி காதா பிட்ட காதா நின்னே நம்பினானோ அந்த மாதிரி இந்த ஒரு எடுத்து பார்த்தோம்னா தெலுங்கு வேர்ட்ஸ்ன்னு அப்படின்னு பார்த்தோம்னா தெலுங்கு காம்போசிஷன்லேயே 50 வேர்டுக்கு மேலே தேராது. ஸோ நான் வந்துட்டு அவரை டீக்ரேட் பண்ணுறதுக்கு சொல்லலை. அவர் ஹி ஹாஸ் எக்ஸ்பிரஸ்ட் இட் வெரி வெல் வித் தட் லிமிட்டட் நாலேஜ் ஆஃப் ஹிஸ் இன் இஸ் சாகித்யம்ஸ். ஸோ அதனால் வந்துட்டு ஸோ லாங்குவேஜ் அண்ட் தி மியூசிக் அவளோட வந்துட்டு அவள் போட்ட சாகித்யத்துக்கு வந்துட்டு போடுற மியூசிக் இருக்கிற மியூசிக்கை வந்துட்டு மியூசிக்கை ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ண அதை எக்ஸ்ப்ரெஸ் பண்ணுறதுக்கு வேர்ட்ஸ் யூஸ் பண்ணுறது, அது நம்ம அப்படி தான் அனலைஸ் பண்ணணுமே தவிர வந்துட்டு அவுட் போரிங் அப்படின்ட்டு நான் சொல்ல மாட்டேன், நிச்சயமாக சொல்ல மாட்டேன். அவுட் போரிங்னா வந்துட்டு அத்தனை ஒரு பாட்டில் வந்துட்டு ஸ்வராட்சரம் வைக்கணும், ஒரு பாட்டில் வந்துட்டு தாளத்தோட பேர் வைக்கணும், க்ஷேத்திரத்தோட பேக்கணும், க்ஷேத்திரத்தில் இருக்கிற வந்துட்டு எல்லா காடஸை அவளோட ஃப்ரெண்ட்ஸ் அண்ட் ஃபோர்ஸு அந்த என்ன பூஜை பண்ணானோ என்ன பலன் கிடைக்கும், எந்த நைவேத்தியம் வைக்கணும், எந்த நாள் பூஜை பண்ணணும், எது விசேஷம், அது பண்ணினானே என்ன பலன், இத்தனையெல்லாம் வந்துட்டு ஒரு காம்பவுண்ட்லேருந்து ஆரம்பிச்சு இனானிமேட்டிக் திங்கு மேலே சொல்கிறது அப்படிங்கிறது வந்துட்டு ஏதாவது விட்டு போகலாம். அதெல்லாம் வந்துட்டு தீட்சிதர் காம்போசிஷன்ஸை விட்டே போகலை, அதெல்லாம் டீட்டெயில்ஸ் அழகாக சொல்லியிருக்கார். அதனால் வந்துட்டு in his case some of the composition is so lengthy which is not suitable for that raga has got limitation இருக்கு. இப்போ ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் நவரோஜோ இல்லையா, அந்த மாதிரி ராகத்துக்கெல்லாம் ஸ்கோப்பு வந்துட்டு ரொம்ப கம்மி. அதில் வந்துட்டு ரொம்ப அன்வீல்டியாக வந்துட்டு ஒரு காம்போசிஷன் பண்ணார்னா அவருக்கு ஏன்னா பிகாஸ் அந்த ஒரு காம்போசிஷன்லேயே வந்துட்டு அந்த டீட்டெயில் சொல்லணுங்கிறதுக்காக he has resorted even to மத்தியமகால சாகித்ய போர்ஷன் பல்லவி அனுபல்லவி சரணம் எல்லாம் பண்ணியிருக்கார். அப்படி இருந்து கூட அது வந்துட்டு ஓயலை, அது அதனால் வந்துட்டு முடியலை. அதனால் வந்துட்டு அத்தனை அன்வீல்டி காம்போசிஷன்ஸ் he has given. நான் வந்துட்டு இதை வந்துட்டு அவரை டீக்ரேட் பண்ணுறதுக்கு சொல்லலை, பட் we are serious students of music. we must analyze it in that spirit. Thank you. Now I want Parasuram to enlighten us.
எல்லாருக்கும் நமஸ்காரம். ஓம் ஸ்ரீ குருபியோ நமஹ. Very, very fortunate and honored to be among all these wonderful, very sincere and genuine musicians, musicologists. And of course, TRS சாரோட மியூசிக் எஜுகேஷன் ட்ரஸ்ட்டில் பேசணும்னா ஒரு பாக்கியம் தான். He was such a wonderful musician, one of the greatest musicians, a great composer and a great, genuine rasika. Probably the greatest rasika I have come across in my life is Professor T.R. Subramaniam. நிறைய வாசிச்சிருக்கேன், அவருக்கு அக்காம்பனி பண்ணியிருக்கேன். அவர் என்னோட வாசிப்பு ரசித்த மாதிரி வேறு யாருமே ரசிச்சிடல. இட் இஸ் ஹிஸ் குணா, நாட் த குணா ஆஃப் மை பிளேயிங். அந்த அளவுக்கு ஒரு பெரிய மனசு. எல்லா கச்சேரிக்கும் வருவார், whether it be some junior or whatever. I feel like saying this because my point of view of what Radha Venkatachalam ji has asked me to present is from the Rasika point of view. What makes something concert worthy is a point of view of whose? Of primarily the Rasika. Because if the Rasika rejects a particular attitude, a particular compositional drive, a particular way of singing, it becomes, over a period of time, it becomes concert unworthy. Right? I'm being very objective about this. I'm not commenting this way or that way about it. I'm not judging it. A Marubalka exists because people like it. Right? A Vatapi Ganapatim Bhajeyaham exists as an all-time favorite in a concert, across generations, across linguistics, across everything, across knowledge levels. It exists. That is an irrefutable truth. And that's what makes it concert worthy. Right? So I'm on your side. I'm also there many times. Right now I'm here as a speaker. But from the Rasika's point of view, I think TRS are held the flag the highest. அதனால தான் அந்த மென்ஷன் பண்ணுறேன். பிகாஸ் மியூசிஷியனுக்கு ரசிகன் ஆகிறதுக்கு ரொம்ப கஷ்டம். Because we are always sitting in judgment. We value our bani, our doership is very, very high. The rasika is a non-doer. ஸோ அந்த அகம் ஒன்றுமே அதை தியாகம் பண்ணி தான் இங்கே நீங்கள் எல்லாம் உட்காந்து கேட்டுருக்கேன். அல்ட்டா 3 மணி நேரம் நீங்கள் வேறு ஏதாவது பண்ணலாமே. உங்கள் வேல்யூபிள் டைம் கொடுக்கறதே உங்கள் பெரிய மனசு தான். ஐ எம் சேயிங் திஸ் வெரி ஆப்ஜெக்டிவ்லி, நாட் டு ஃப்ளாட்டர் யூ. ஸோ ஃப்ரம் த பாயிண்ட் ஆஃப் வியூ ஆஃப் கான்சர்ட் வர்த்தினஸ், the Rasika is center stage. Rasika through the ages, and we will very briefly see how this works. For example, Radha Venkatachalam ji said as to how probably Shyama Shastri among these 3 people, I don't call them Trinity, okay? I don't like the word because it has unnecessary and unnecessary Christian Holy Trinity kind of a connotation. Call them Trimurti. I will suggest this as a change for all of us. I'm not saying it is wrong, but it is better to call them Trimurti. Namak Trimurti irkale. So why do we need to resort to a word which has other baggage? Anyway, so Shyama Shastri வந்து அவங்க சொன்னா ரொம்ப compact, ரொம்ப limited words. He is not very prolific as a Sahityakara, which is correct. But maybe that's what makes it concert worthy. Right? The succinctness, the familiarity that even the common man can relate to. The common man may not be all the time very esoterically or educationally qualified. But dikke varamma keta ellarkume adu question dane. It relates, it resonates. Right? Nee like enakku enna dikku amma va kooprava ellarume amma kooprom. Till our last breath we worship our mother. So that may be a very wonderful way of relating to the Rasika. So where what we can probably see, I am not in a position to judge any of these great 3 composers. My ஞானம், my experience is very, very, very limited. ஒரு நெல் அளவுக்கு தான். Correct? So நம்ம வந்து concert worthiness, we are not here to evaluate them. What has worked and what has been very beautiful in that working to make the Rasika. Because the idea is that many of these composers didn't even compose with the idea of a concert. Correct? So நம்ம வந்து futureல வந்து அவளோட value பண்றதுல அர்த்தமே இல்லை. It's not even logical. Probably Tyagaraja was closest to wanting to propagate his compositions, and nothing wrong in it, okay? I'm not judging. He was closest to encompassing a wholesome, holistic kind of musical experience. A concert is a holistic musical experience, right? All of us want so many things in the concert. It's like one saddi, kalyana saapadu mari dhaan. So the concert is a very beautiful, holistic experience that every Rasika takes home. Every musician also takes home. So அந்த வகையில் we will look at these 3 composers from இதை பற்றி நிறைய பேசலாம். And it is very tied up to what Vijayalakshmy ji just presented. Because the idea of what touches the Rasika, the immediate, without much of cogitation, the immediate appeal that a composition strikes in the mind and rasanubhava of the Rasika is what makes it so beautiful. So on the point of view, she has already elaborated the idea of bhava, rasa, etc., which is embedded in these compositions. In the topic மேல நிறைய பேசிட்டே இருக்கலாம். Because அவ்வளவு compositions. You know, coming back, even though Shyama Shastri composed a very lesser, among these 3 composers, he was the person who was least prolific. Number of compositions is much lesser than both Tyagaraja and Dikshitar. But the evaluation, it's not a numbers game. அவரோட கிருதிகள் எல்லாமே they have been superlative in terms of Rasikas. அவர் கம்போஸ் பண்ண 100 odd, I don't know how many numbers, but much less. All of them are exceptionally presented in concerts today. So we are not here to evaluate. Let me just, so this again is a very abstract and relative, even more relative than what Vijayalakshmy said in the beginning, that the idea of bhava and rasa is a very abstract quantity. It's not like analyzing sahitya or analyzing raga prayoga or, you know, all those things. So the idea, let me just, my guru, Professor S.R. Janakiraman says very often that Tyagaraja caught the raga. And Muthuswami Dikshidhar taught the raga. Idhila vande from the point of view of a concert and from the point of view of the rasika. It's very important. Idha analyze pannalam. I can do 3 hours on this itself. On this bifurcation of how their approach was and what the final effect has been. You know. Let me just talk about what creates Ranjaka. Ranjati iti raga chulva. That which delights. The word Ranjaka, from which we derive so many words, has got to do with the idea of creating delight. Rasa creates delight. Language creates delight. Rhythm creates delight. Raga creates delight. Bhava creates delight. Ultimately, it is delight that we are seeking. Even in philosophy, when we appreciate Muthuswami Dikshidhar for his very, very, very esoteric and very complete and very, what can we say, exhaustive echoing of Adi Shankara's philosophy, it ultimately creates delight within us. And that's what a concert is trying to achieve. A concert tries to achieve all these delights at the same time. Linguistic delight, poetry, nama relish pandrom, right? So, for example, poetry la irukra sound relish pandrom. Shruti pottukattum. How even the meaning that is within language becomes secondary to the sound of the language. Okay. So, நான் பாடி காமிக்கிறேன். இதை ஏற்கனவே மென்ஷன் பண்ணாங்க அவங்க. இந்த கன்னடா கிருதி சாகேத நிகேதன, the delight of the Dvitiyakshara. சாகேத நிகேதன சாகேதன நக லேதா சாகேத நிகேதன சாகேதன நகலேதா. இது நமக்கு பாஷையோடு அர்த்தம் புரிஞ்சாலும் புரியாட்டாலும் 90% of us, of the Rasikas, don't know Telugu. Do we? There were times, say even Aryakudi Ramanujayengar times or Alathur brothers, Tyagaraja Kritis were almost always the favorite. Not because we understood the language, because the language sounded so beautiful. So the sound of a language is probably more appealing and more concert worthy than the meaning of the Sahitya. Idile vanda avanga sonnangle Dvitiyakshara prasa creates that delight. Rakendu mukha inta parake mine naruna nirake migula koriti rakesi harana rake maina japakurake kalu veturu rakesava Shri Tyagaraja Vinuta Subhachari Tasaketa. So உங்களுக்கு புரிஞ்சுதோ புரியலையோ அங்கங்க சில வார்த்தைகள் புரியும். ரா கேசவ ஸ்ரீ புரியும். கரெக்ட்? ரா கேந்து முக இந்த பராகேமி நெனருன நீ ராகே மிகுல கோரித்தி ரா கேசி ஹரண சிலதெல்லாம் நம்மளுக்கு புரியும். But the delight of the sound of this is so beautiful. நமக்கு நம்ம அந்த பாட்டை கொஞ்சம் கவனமாக கேட்டால், மனசை வச்சு கேட்டால் பூரும், you will float in the sound of that ka, Dvitiyakshara prasa. So what makes a composition appealing is first and foremost this, the sounding of the kriti, because that frees the audience from having to know the language. திருப்புகழ் எல்லாம் பாடுறோம், எனக்கு புரியறதா அந்த தமிழ், எனக்கு புரியலை. But I delight in the rhythmic sound of that language. யாருக்கெல்லாம் திருப்புகழ் புரியும் இங்க? See, none of us. Maybe exceptional scholars will understand, but 90% of it I don't understand. but I still delight in it. So concert illa concert len tirupugal paadrome etra perukku puriyarudhu. So meaning sometimes becomes secondary to the sound of the language. I always give this example. Manasayatulortune. In the Kriti ketirkela. You know what line is chosen for Niraval in this Kriti by all masters? Kalilo rajasa tamasa gunamulu galavari chelimi. Kalilo rajasa tamasa. You know what the meaning of this line is? Kalilo rajasa tamasa gunamulu vari chelimi. Tyagaraja says, in this Kali Yuga, why are you associating yourself with all people of gunas of rajasa and tamasa? So imagine in a Niraval context, is this a line which you would choose to sing again and again and again in terms of meaning? I think it is silly in terms of meaning, but in terms of the setting, in terms of the sound, Niraval worthiness enadrima. I will also talk about it. The manodharma worthiness of a Kriti is very important in determining how concert worthy it is. அந்த கிரகம் அங்கே வருது, அந்த எடுப்பு அங்கே வருது, அது வந்து கோர்வை போடுறதுக்கு எவ்வளோ ஸ்கோப் கொடுக்கறது, குறைப்பு போடுறதுக்கு எவ்வளோ ஸ்கோப் கொடுக்கறது, எப்படிலாம் அந்த இடத்துக்கு வரலாம். அந்த இடம்னா நம்ம கிரகா. That determines your choice for the main of the Kriti, of the concert. So concert worthinessக்கு அது எவ்வளவு ஸ்கோப் மனோதர்மத்துக்கு கொடுக்கறதுன்னு you have to ஸ்தவராஜான்னு ஒரு ராகம் இருக்கு தீக்ஷிதரோடு. That is very very difficult raga, very complex raga. என்னதான் பண்ண முடியும் அதை வச்சுட்டு? மனோதர்ம ஆலாபனை பண்ண முடியாது, பண்ணினாலும் ரசிக்கிற மாதிரி இருக்காது, ரொம்ப காம்ப்ளெக்ஸாக இருக்கும். ஸோ இட் ஆட்டோமேட்டிக்லி ரூல்ஸ் இட் செல்ஃப் அவுட் ஆஃப் சாய்ஸ் ஃபார் அ சிக்னிஃபிகண்ட் மனோதர்மா, ரைட்? அதே மாதிரி ஒரு கலிகி உண்டே கதாவோ ராமானி சமானமெவருவோ விச் ஆஃபர் யூ ஸ்கோப் ஃபார் ஆலாபனா, நிரவல் அண்ட் கல்பனா ஸ்வரா is what will determine whether it is concert worthy. Always remember, my concert worthy is within quotes, because I am not judging it. I don't want to judge it. The concert and the rasika determine whether it is concert worthy, right? Neenga nanna rasicha, you can, for example, a Sri Satyanaranam upasmahe. The fact that it is a slightly slower composition, the alapana also in it will be presented in a slower, and that makes it concert worthy, because in between, if you put a little Vilambakala Kriti with Vilambakala Manodharma scope, it works. So the context of where the composition also occurs within the scheme of things, whether you like it or no, we have a certain format. Correct? Thanks to Ariyakudi Ramanuja Iyengar, we have a concert format, and that has been kind of determining what is concert worthy or concert not concert worthy for the past 100 years or so, right? 1930s the format came about. So on the context la da oru navarasa kannada value, you know, ninnu vinna namadindu, that kriti becomes valid in the context of that format, in the context of its kala pramana, where it provides relief from a heavy previous piece which was very heavy. எல்லாமே தீக்ஷிதர் கிருத்தியார் நிறைய ஃபிலாசபி நல்ல அத்வைத்தம் சொல்லி பாடினா யாரும் இருக்க மாட்டா கேட்கறதுக்கு. இன்ஃபேக்ட் இப்போ சபாக்காராலே சொல்கிறா, சார் நீங்கள் அந்த விளம்ப கால கிருத்திஸ் தீக்ஷிதர் கிருத்திஸ்லாம் பாடாதீங்கோ, எல்லாரும் எழுந்து போயிடுறான்னு. ஹீ இஸ் வரிட் அபவுட் பீப்புள் இன் த ஆடியன்ஸ். ஸோ விறுவிறுப்பாக நிறைய தமிழ் கிருத்தி பாடுங்கோ, நிறைய தியாகராஜ கிருத்தி பாடும்போது அவள் சொல்கிறா, which is a valid thing from the point of view of the concert. I am at a level where I think the concert itself is invalid. Okay, that is a different matter. That is a personal matter. ஏதோ கான்சர்ட் பண்ணுறோம், ஏதோ பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம், இத்தனை வருஷமாக பண்ணியா சரி போயிட்டு. The concert sometimes has very little musical validity. But here we are talking about, that is what Radha Venkatachalam ji asked me to speak about, concert validity. So enadnala or Tyagaraja Kriti concert vardiya irukku. Why 80% of our concerts have Tyagaraja Kriti? Is because of 3-4 things. One is the kind of variety of Sahitya, the kind of variety of Kala Pramana, the kind of variety of structures. Idella avanga pesiyach. the kind of variety in the Deshadi Bhava irukliya. Deshadi Bhava is a very delightful aspect of our tala. Without you knowing, you may not even know why you are rasifying something. Okay? Remember, a lot of rasa happens at the subliminal level, where you are relating it with your consciousness and not with your intellect. So if I Teliyaleru Rama Bhakti Margamunu Teliyaleru Rama, here the delight rests on the Varte Rama and how it lands. Nama idhukku dhaan Deshadi Bhavan one interpretation, right? Bantu Riti Kolu Viya Vaya Rama Bantu Riti Kolu. So where the Hindustani la sum solva. The concept of sum is where the word, the music and your mind meet. If you have been to a Hindustani concert, you will see they are always and the point la. Suppose I say balma so and the that is where the tabla also hits. You also nod your head and there is emphasis. And the emphasis lo oru delight irukku. Nee evlo vaatti and the emphasis kuduthalum neenga rasiped. It is that aspect which Tyagaraja exploited to a great extent. So many compositions. You know, that sense of the sum, the arrival, the merging of the soul of the listener with the composition. It's very important because rasa anga irukku. And the point of delight nama paakanam. So idella ava conscious ah pannala romba yadarthama romba intuitive ah pannala namakku theriyadu. Many of the structures etc that you speak of, they are structures born out of a great amount of intuition. They are not necessarily all the time worked out. Yes, there is a very, very beautiful divine intellect driving it. But a lot of it, intellect is not only that which you think. Intellect is also that which you don't think. Yeah, remember that. Buddhi solrom. Buddhi is always not your thought out actions. It also includes your intuition. That's also very much part. In Gestalt psychology, they will emphasize a lot on that. That's how we learn. That's how we appreciate life, is through intuition and not through conscious procedural thought. Anyway, that is psychology. Let's not go there. But the idea that Tyagaraja compositions, we will not have time to go through examples. But the symmetry and asymmetry also is something which the mind delights in. So as much as it delights in Nagumomu Galavani Namano Haruni Jagamele Suryuni Janaki Varuni. The mention panna before structure also. Very clear cut symmetric structure. Almost it invokes in you the joy of a bhajana. This is what he inherited from Bhadrachala Ramadasa. He acknowledges that Tyagaraja. The idea of the bhajana. The bhajana is very appealing and immediately appealing to everyone in the audience. You don't need to know any talam also. That is why Tyagaraja Kritis score very highly, because he composed with his chipla in hand. What we talk about Mishra Chapu, Khanda Chapu, elam pesina liya, they are all arriving out of that context. Cha, 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 cha. So cycle of 10 gets converted into 2 kriyas, none of which involve the fingers, because his hands are holding the chipla. That creates the ambience and magic of a bhajana. That we today, yenatnala bhajane ki dhaan nariya kootam irukku indha kacheri solungo. Because it has immediate appeal. Immediate appeal arth. Adhe marida in the Triputa and Mishra Chapu confusion also is because of that. Muthuswami Dikshitar was didn't employ any chapu. Even Rupaka chapu kudi ille. It is 1 2 1 2 3 4 da. It is very, very clearly documented. Even the Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshini, the notation is given that way. So there are no two ways about the historicity of it. That the historicity of the Khanda Chapu, Mishra Chapu, the word Chapu itself I think comes from the word Chipu, Chupla. The word chapu itself could have come from that. It's a sonic transgression of the same word. So in the Khanda chapul irukara, Mishra chapul irukara kind of magic, immediate appeal, and it gives you a kind of fillip, you know, or pickup kodukum. Or pakala nilabadi pakala pakka. So he chooses in the Nalethalli. That is another great thing about Tyagaraja. He will rearrange the tala in so many beautiful ways, both symmetric and asymmetric. So takadimi pakka, you know, so kala. Again, the Dvitya Prasa is what drives the composition. Right? So, idile vande the proportion of vowels to consonants, if you analyze it, is very, very critical for your enjoyment. Dikshitar also was a master of that. His invention of the Madhyamakala Sahitya, I think he will agree with me, hopefully, is because he felt that his lines were in Shankara's tradition of the compound words very long. He could not break them. And the joy of it and the correctness of it was in its vilamba. He would never transgress that. But in his Madhyamakala, he gave the thrill of a little higher tempo. Thrill vename. Rasikarthak thrill vename. So I would say, the greatest contribution of Dikshitar in terms of musical composition is the majesty and the handling of raga in his Madhyamakala Sahitya. Even though I revel in many other aspects of his musicianship, this was very unique of his. So, Inniki Gudi Pata, if you go observe, in a concert which has Vilamba, whether it be Kamalamba Navavarnam or Nilotpalamba Navavarnam or the Panchalinga Sthala Kritis, all of them will contain this magic of the Madhyamakala Sahitya. And that is what makes it very, very concert worthy. Of course, the Advaitic philosophy, the metaphysics, the Shri Vidya, if you take the Kamalamba Nava Varna, right? Adile irukara mari oru Shri Vidya varengeme in such beautiful packaged form. So if a member of the audience has that inkling, has that inclination, and has that call of the science of and the tantra of Shri Vidya, he or she can relate to it. Right? Or composition le avlo vishayam. Panchalinga Sthala Kritis avlo vishayam about architecture, about iconography. Navagraha Kritis and avlo vishayam about Jyotisham, about astronomy. So all these are what are relating to the people. If there is a scholar in the audience who knows about these things, he or she will derive great ranjaka out of, aha, Dikshitar namakku therinja vishayatha patti pesrare. நம்ம தெரிஞ்ச க்ஷேத்திரத்தை பற்றி பேசுகிறார், அந்த க்ஷேத்திரத்தில் இருக்கிற விசேஷங்கள் பற்றி பேசுகிறார், அதோட புராணத்தை பற்றி பேசுகிறார்னு there is resonance. Resonance is what makes a concert work. It's a resonance between the composition and the listener and the rasika. So இந்த மாதிரி நிறைய விஷயங்கள் அந்த resonances create பண்ணுறதுல தான். I'm not saying they did it consciously. They did it out of great amount of conviction. Yeah. So Dikshitar, I will say, I'm going all over the place because you know, there is so much to cover. Dikshitar was a scholar's musician, scholar's composer. உங்களுக்கு விஷயம் தெரிஞ்சது, உங்களுக்கு கொஞ்சம் அத்வைத்தம், கொஞ்சம் பிரம்மனை பற்றி, கொஞ்சம் if you know the philosophy and tattvam and logic, then you will relate to him. And there are going to be members of the audience. And so the concert will have to include, to include you in the concert, to include that kind of rasika in the concert, I'll have to include this. That's what makes it, right? Not that any of them were any lesser, but Dikshitarode, like they said about in the Sahitya, in the Raga handling, illame konjam gudi deeper, more deliberate, more sophisticated. Like SRJ sir, he taught the Raga. Sometimes Dikshitar Kriti paadnamna jalpo aalapanile enna pandrathu onnum baaki vekkale avaru. There is nothing to say anything other than that. If you take a Kedaram, Ananda Natna Prakashathukku mele enna pandrathu? Thirupi adhe dhaan paadnam. We are only fooling ourselves and lying to ourselves that we are doing some kalpana. Kalpana onnume illa adu. Adhaan thirupi porati potundirukom. So let us not live in that illusion. So sometimes Dikshitar Kriti kela aalapane venda. So what is a positive of the Kriti becomes a negative for Manodharma. Always remember. If the Kriti, for example, a Janani Ninnu Vina in Riti Gaule, everything about Riti Gaule is said. Idhe Nedunori Krishnamurti sir oruka sonnar. He sang Janani Nivana, I was accompanying him. Sir, you can Alapanai padirikalam. And I told him after the concert. So he said, in Alapanai konum baki ele, it is redundant. Because Kriti lela vandach. So the question of what makes a raga, a composition concert worthy for Manodharma, sometimes the greatness and expansion of the composition becomes a negative for it. This is the way I think. Chelapo Dikshithar Kritikala enthikku. If you sing Sri Matu Bhutam, you think you can sing Kannada better than that? Becomes redundant. So in the vagaila, concert worthiness la indha mari things la nariya vishayangal irukku. Tyagaraja's idea of including his vision of Sangadis in the Kritis, that's what makes it very appealing. Or Darini telusukuntiyo e papamuvo, it is for the joy and thrill of the Sangatis, because the audience is relating to that line, staying with that line and participates with the Sangatis. Darini telusu, or KG student sollu kudukkar first, right? Adukapram he says what all is possible here. He puts that mystique in front of you. Darini telusu. The audience can step by step, he builds it up for the Rasika. These are all strategies which are very intuitive. And also within this, he also leaves a provision for the musician. He knows that the musician who is going to come 100 years later will do his own Sangatis within it. Darini telusu. This he knows one GNB will come and he will do all these things. I'm being very honest. That is the vision. That is how he makes every composition of his current. And the current aesthetics ni enna vanna pannalam. That is the vision, Bhagavat vision. It is not Tyagaraja's vision, like Vijayalakshmy ji said. It is Bhagavat vision. It is a vision of Saraswati Mata to say that these compositions live forever. It is here, her wish, not your wish or my wish. What makes something concert worthy? Ultimately, we have to go to that point only. Nariya irukku asymmetry in Tyagaraja. Asymmetry also creates great joy. I sang Nagu Momu Galavani, very symmetric. Ide vandu very beautiful. Nin ne bhajana seyu vadanu nin ne bhajana. He creates that sense of the ardi, that pallavi il irukkuradhu, but he creates it offbeat, and he divides the tala into not 4 and 4 but 3 and 5. Nin, that is the first part of the tala. Ne bhajana, the ardi feel there. Seyu vadanu. Before, if you think it is accidental, he will repeat the same thing in the Anupallavi. Pannaga Sagai Parula Vedalenu. You see how consciously he is invoking that spirit of asymmetry within your aesthetics. Ungalkulla irukra asymmetry nama enjoy pandrome. In nature we enjoy so much of asymmetry. A mountain is never symmetric. A river never flows in a symmetry. But we enjoy it. That is rasa. So that is what makes it appeal to you, solrena. இன்னும் பாலமுரளி சார் அந்த கிருதி பாடுவார், எப்படி இருக்கும் தெரியுமா? நமக்கு தெரியாது that we are actually enjoying the asymmetry. Anyway, இது மாதிரி நிறைய இருக்கு, நிறைய எக்ஸாம்பிள்ஸ் இருக்கு. அந்த எடுப்பில் அவங்க சொல்கிற மாதிரி இதுக்கு what example ராதாஜி gave, even கலிக்கு உண்டே கதாலாம் you will see find that it is not coming on the downbeat, it is coming before or after, you know. The காலடத்தில் எடுப்பு, all of them are dividing the thala into asymmetric sections. The longer charanam, the structure of most of Muthuswami Dikshithar Kritis is where the charanam is the most significant part of the composition. Correct? உங்களுக்கு தெரியும் இல்லையா? That provides for a certain amount of absorption. There are going to be people in the Rasikas who want that absorption, Some of them, it will also allow them to meditate a little bit and get into a meditative framework. Adum venume. Eppo pathalum thullinde irundha dapanguth mari, if you want thrill all the time, you need to give them repose also. So the charanam of Tyagaraja, many Dikshithar compositions, I find that I am drawn to it because of its meditative character. Right? So this is a very important thing. And then after that meditative character, again there is the thrill of the Madhyamakala Sahitya. See, all these small things which when we look back, you know, Tyagaraja's different settings of in the same raga, like Radhaji also pointed out, allows for you to sing Karhara Priya in a short way, allows you to sing Karhara Priya in a big way and in a medium way. It's important. A Kalyani Ammaravamma is as valid as a very long Vilambakala Kriti, because that is what allows for the difference of packaging of a raga also. I use the word packaging in a very objective way. Don't say I'm saying they packaged ragas. They didn't package ragas. They sang compositions. But there is a packaging involved in the process. Packaging is not a bad word. I'm making that caveat. So of course, the number of ragas that Tyagaraja created, Vinta ragas, whether it be from Swarnarnava or whether it be his own inspiration, we don't know. But 80 odd ragas, and all of them which are so delightful. Oru Bahudari Gudi vandirukuma, right? Oru Ranjani vandirukuma, Oru Jayanta Shri vandirukuma. We delight in that. And today in the concert, that is why Tyagaraja is the staple. It is the main rubric around which everybody, because he provides that kind of variety for the Rasika. In terms of types of composition, types of ragas, or ye dari sancherintura ikabal kara. So the audience is interested. Oh, romba rare irke. Padani dapamaga sarigasa. He doesn't keep it simple all the time. He also will make you think. That is part of delight. Your intellect gets provoked and gets delighted when it is challenged. That is also part of, I will choose a composition like this in my concerts, because I know that there will be somebody, at least 30% of the audience, who are listening along with their mind, who will want to know what is happening. And in the raga tode, Aroha Avroha, this is a raga called Suti Ranjani. Nada Varangani no raga. Illame challenging Aroha Krama. So even if the audience, member of the audience doesn't know, they will spend time very fruitfully trying to figure it out. You have to give them that opportunity also. The concert has to give opportunity for the intellectual engagement of the Rasika. Right? Only then it is a logical process of whether something is concert worthy. Extent of poetry. Dikshitar, for example, he always takes you on a pilgrimage. Travelogue. His compositions are a travelogue. Tiruvarur sometimes, Madurai sometimes in Rameshwaram, sometimes in Kashi, sometimes in Jalandhar. He travelled like Adi Shankara did. He also did this Parivrajaka. And as a result, Dikshitar compositions will make the listener travel. In the இடத்துல உட்கார்ந்தே நீங்க காசிக்கு போலாம், ராமேஸ்வரத்துக்கு போலாம். Right? So that is a joy. That makes it concert worthy. Right? So when we talk about singing multiple deities, Shivanoda etra Dakshinamurti na, you are all automatically transformed. You are at the feet of your Guru. Sri Dakshinamurti Vidhalita Dasarte Chidananda. He takes you back to the Kada Solvaravar. Avarodu paatla irukra mari or details. He talks about his Chidananda. He invokes because of his association with that particular branch of philosophy. So idu mari avar oroduthu Ramanatham Bhajayamna, you are taken to Rameshwaram. Somewhere else you are taken to Tiruvarur. Everywhere he will take you. So that is the value of his composition in the Kriti, in the concert. Shyama Shastri, because of his self-effacing simplicity. You can look at it as something which is not valuable. I look at it as very valuable. Within a concert, he's effortless calling to the mother all the time in different ways. It is a call of Jivatma to Paramatma. So that is also, it takes the audience, takes the listeners to a very different zone of contemplation, of remembering the mother. When I lost my mother a few years back. When I learn a kriti, when I listen to a Shama Shastri kriti, I will be Nyayama, Meenakshama, Keta, Enakum apdi thonum. Ungalakum thonum adu. Right? So that resonance that kriti creates is why it is being sung. Not necessarily because of its great poetic excellence. And who are we to judge its poetic excellence? Enakku enna theriyum? Poetry pathiyo, Sanskrit pathiyo, edho therinja vethiyo manage pannittu irukom naanga ellarum. Okay? We are in no position to evaluate them, is my humble submission. Okay? So I think I've far exceeded my time. But like I say, it's a beautiful Saddhi, the concert. Right? The main item because of so many reasons like I mentioned, not that one is more superior or the other. In the format and in the context of the current concert, Tyagaraja rules. Not that the others are secondary, but they also play a very important role. Like I have mentioned, all of them play a very beautiful role. And that's when magic happens. So of course, there are so many thematic everything concerts coming up now. For a Tyagaraja Utsavam, you will do a lot of Dikshidhar Vaibhavam now, you will present all of Dikshidhar that has its own place. But for a general concert worthiness, I think all of them are so, they have their own individual roles to play. Correct? The Football World Cup is going on. You realize that the forward is as important as the goalkeeper. Last 4 matches have been decided on penalties. So doesn't matter if Ronaldo or Messi or whatever, the goalkeeper has to come and save the team. So ellarkum andha role irukku. Oru Tyagaraja kritikku enna role irukko, adhe mari oru Dikshidhar kritikku oru role irukku. Adhe mari oru Shama Shastri composition ku oru role irukku. Because all of them are fulfilling very beautiful roles. So with that, and like I said, எல்லாமே பகவத் சங்கல்பம். அவ கம்போஸ் பண்ணுறதும் பகவத் சங்கல்பம், நம்ம ரசிக்கிறதும் அதே பகவத் சங்கல்பம். And what keeps it relevant, and I'm sure it will be relevant because the music keeps recreating and reinventing itself in the hands of great musicians. How TRS interpreted a Tyag, Tadvameruga Dharama Bharatadvameruga, அப்படி பாடுவார். ஒரு கிருதி, ஒரு கச்சேரியில் இப்படி பாடி இதுக்கு 2ஆம் காலம் ஸ்வரம் போடுறார் அவர். நான் வாசிச்சுட்டு இருக்கேன். I'm not joking. So that is an interpretation. It makes it valid. There the poetic reference may be secondary. It is music which it is Garuda Dhwani and that Arohana Krama which is so delightful. You know, Tattvamasi Anuvakhyata adela secondary. It's a joy. As a எடுத்து ஒரு டான்ஸ் ஆடுற மாதிரி ஒரு டெம்போவில் பாடுவார். அது மாதிரி தான். So like they said, sometimes the musicality will reign supreme, sometimes the lyrics will reign supreme, sometimes the sound of this whole music lyric package will reign supreme. So all of it contribute to, so there are no clear cut parameters as to how a concert ஒரு இடத்துல ஒரு மாதிரி ஒர்க் ஆகுது. வாட் மேக்ஸ் எ கான்சர்ட் வர்தி இன் சென்னை வில் பி வெரி டிஃப்ரெண்ட் ஃப்ரம் வாட் மேக்ஸ் இட் கான்சர்ட் வர்தி இன் பிட்ஸ்பர்க். ரைட்? இப்போ தியாகராஜ வித்வத் சமாஜம்ல நம்ம எப்படி கான்சர்ட் பிளான் பண்ணுறோமோ இட் வில் பி வெரி டிஃப்ரெண்ட் ஃபார் சே வாட் இஸ் தட் மார்கழி மஹோத்சவம் டிவி. ரைட்? இட் வில் பி வெரி டிஃப்ரெண்ட். பட் போத் ஆஃப் தெம் ஆர் கான்சர்ட்ஸ். ஸோ யூ ஹாவ் டு டிசைட். அங்கே நான் விளம்பரமாக ஒரு நவாவரணம் பாடுறேன்னா சான்ஸே இல்லை, அடுத்த வருஷம் கூப்பிட மாட்டான். ஸோ there are so many other non-musical factors also which influence what is concert worthy. I want to play the devil's advocate and tell you that there is no one concert worthiness. What was concert worthy 40 years back may not be concert worthy today. And what is going to be concert worthy, like for example now, last 20 years I have seen there is a great amount of passion for manodharma. ஏட்டி ஜென்மம் இதையும் எடுத்து அந்த கிருத்தியே எவ்வளோ சின்னது, பட் வராளி பாடிண்டே இருப்பாள். அது புழிஞ்சு எடுத்து அந்த ராகத்தோட சாறு கூட இல்லாத லெவலுக்கு பாடிட்டு இருப்பாள். பீப்புள் சீம் டு என்ஜாய் that kind of expansive creativity, so-called creativity. It's not creativity. After 10 minutes, the creativity is all gone. It is all nonsense only. But that so-called creativity, என்ன இருக்குது வராளியில் பாடுறதுக்கு அதுக்கு மேலே? Anyway, so it also is contextual, it is temporal. In sense, different times will have a different take on what works in a concert. Okay, so thank you very much Radha Venkatachalam ji for that opportunity. Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha.
It was really an enlightening talk, which I expected, from Sriram, and he proved his mettle as usual. I want to mention one or two things, which I observed in his speech. சாகித்யம் தெரிஞ்சு பாடணும், சாகித்யத்தை தெரிஞ்ச இடத்துல தான் வந்துட்டு மனோதர்ம சங்கீதத்தை வந்துட்டு இன்டர்பிரிட்டேஷன் பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. Here, I want to mention one incident which happened in Delhi, which I happened to witness. There was a lady, who came to TRS, and, she told that she wanted to do Neraval in the evening in her concert. அதனால் என்ன பாட போகிறோம் அப்படின்னு, தன்யாசி பாட போகிறேன் அப்படின்னு, பேஷா பாடுகோ அப்படின்னார். தன்யாசியில் வந்துட்டு ஷீ சோஸ் సంగీత జ్ఞానము. அதில் வந்துட்டு షడ్రుపులు చేయు కార్యము తెలుసును త్యాగరాజునికి. அதுதான் இந்த 6 விதமான வந்துட்டு எதிரிகளை வந்துட்டு அடக்கிறதுக்கு வந்துட்டு தியாகராஜருக்கு தெரியும் அப்படிங்கிறது. வாட் ஷி டிட் வாஸ் தாளம் வந்துட்டு ஷட்ரிப்புல முன்னால் வந்து விடுறது. அதனால் வந்து காரியமு తెలుసును தியாகராஜுனிக்கின்னு பாடிட்டு இருந்தா. தெலுங்கில் வந்துட்டு அந்த இடத்துல ஷி டிட் நெரவல். இட் வாஸ் ஸோ இன்சல்ட்டிங் டு தியாகராஜா. பிகாஸ் காரியமுங்கிறது வந்துட்டு தெலுங்கில் வந்துட்டு நப்ஷலுக்கு பேர். அதில் வந்துட்டு அவர் காத்தால் ஏதோ ஒரு பாடிட்டு இருக்கச்ச சதா சிவ சிவ சிவயன ராதா அப்படின்னு சொல்லியிருக்காரு. தன்யாசிக்கு சதா ரொம்ப நன்னா இருக்கும் இல்லையா. சதா காரியமு தெலுசு அப்படின்னு அந்த மாமி அந்த இடத்துல சொல்கிறோம் பாடி. ஸோ தென் சங்கீத கலாநிதி டி.கே. ஜெயராமர் வாஸ் ப்ரெசன்ட் இன் தட் கான்சர்ட். அந்த மாமி போய் கொஞ்சம் வாயை மூட சொல்லுங்க அப்படின்னு. ஸோ நம்ம வந்துட்டு திஸ் இஸ் ஃபார் தி பெனிஃபிட் ஆஃப் தி ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸ் ஆர் ப்ராக்டிஸிங் மியூசிக். அவாவுக்கு வந்துட்டு நம்ம பாடுற இடத்துல அட்லீஸ்ட் நெரவல் ரெப்படிஷன் நம்பர் ஆஃப் டைம் ரெப்படிஷன் பண்ணுறச்ச அந்த இடத்துக்கு வந்துட்டு கம்ப்ளீட் மீனிங் தெரிஞ்சுண்டு ஏதாவது ஸ்ப்ளிட் பண்ணால் கூட வந்துட்டு ஒரு ஆக்வர்ட் மீனிங் ஒன்றும் வராமல் இருக்காங்கிறத பார்த்துட்டு நம்ம பண்ணணும். இப்போ வந்துட்டு ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் ஐ வாண்ட் டு டெல் யூ பஜன சேயவே இல்லை இருக்கு இல்லையா. எல்லோரும் வாத தர்க்க மேலங்கிற இடத்துல நெரவல் பண்ணுறா. வாத தர்க்க மேலங்கிறச்ச வந்துட்டு இட் ஹஸ் கெட் டு சம் வாத தர்க்கம் எதுக்கு அப்படிங்கிறார். பட் எதுக்காக வாத தர்க்கம்? முக்தி மார்க்கமுன்னு தெரியனி இல்லையா, அதுக்கு வாத தர்க்க மேலங்கிறது. ஸோ இது ரெண்டுத்தையும் கலந்து பாடினா இட் வில் பி வெரி இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங் ஆல்சோ. முக்தி மார்க்கமுன்னு தெரியனி வாதத்த அப்படின்னு தியாகராஜரை கொடுத்துருக்காரே. முக்தி மார்க்கமுன்னு తెలియని వాద తర్కము ఏలవాద తెలియని వాద తర్కము ఏల మార్గము తెలియని వాద తర్క முக்தி மார்க்கமுனு தெளியனி வாத தர்க்கமு ஏல பண்ணலாமோனோ அது அதனால் வந்துட்டு அட்லீஸ்ட் ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸ் ஆடியன்ஸ்க்கு நம்ம வந்துட்டு வி ஹவ் காட் தி நாட் ஓன்லி தி ரெஸ்பான்சிபிலிட்டி ஆஃப் ப்ளீஸிங் தெம், இட் இஸ் வி ஹவ் காட் தி ரெஸ்பான்சிபிலிட்டி ஆஃப் டீச்சிங் தெம் ஆல்சோ. அதனால் அது நம்ம டியூட்டின்னு இருக்கிறச்ச நம்ம வந்துட்டு சரியான இடத்துல பாடி அவளுக்கு வந்துட்டு இந்த மாதிரி தான் பாடணும் அப்படிங்கிறது நம்ம சொல்லிக் கொடுக்குறச்சையும் வந்துட்டு ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸ்க்கு வந்துட்டு இப்போ வந்துட்டு டுடே அட் ஒன் டைம் தமிழ்நாடுல வந்துட்டு வாஸ் வெரி வெரி பாப்புலர் because of popularizing Telugu compositions. Bulk of the compositions which was presented in Tamil Nadu by Tamilians was Telugu, which about the language which they were not very much aware of it. அதனால் வந்துட்டு அப்புறம் வந்துட்டு மைக்லெஸ் டேஸில் வந்துட்டு ஒரு மைக்லெஸ் டேஸில் வந்துட்டு ஜென்ரலாக வந்துட்டு ஆடியன்ஸ்க்கு ஜென்ரலாக மியூசிஷியன்ஸ் had to resort to the taking லைன் மத்தியஸ்தாய் லெவலில் இருக்கிற அதில் நிரவல் பண்ணி பாடுறதுக்கு வந்துட்டு அவளுக்கு சௌரியமாக இருந்தது டு ரீச் தி ஆடியன்ஸ். இல்லாட்டா வந்துட்டு லார்ஜர் ஆடியன்ஸ்க்கு வந்துட்டு தே வில் நாட் பி ஏபிள் டு ரீச் இஃப் தி பிச் இஸ் வெரி ஹை. அந்த காலத்தில் பிச்சும் நிறையா இருந்தது. ஆம்பளைகள் ஜென்ஸ் எல்லாம் வந்துட்டு 4-4:30 பாடின்னு இருந்தா. அதில் வந்துட்டு தாரசாயில் பாடுறது அவளுக்கு வந்துட்டு இட்ஸ் வெரி வெரி ஸ்ட்ரெயின்ஃபுல். அதனால் தே ரிசார்ட்டட் டு அப்படி வந்தால் தான் வாணி மாட்டலுக்கு கோப்பக்கிஞ்சி கண்ட அப்படின்னு அந்த இடத்துல வந்துட்டு சரியான வந்துட்டு ஒரு மீனிங் எப்படின்னா ராவணனை பார்த்து சீதை கண் அடித்தார்னு ஆறுது அந்த இடத்துல அப்படின்னு அந்த இடத்துல நிரவல் பண்ணிட்டு இருந்தா. ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி இருக்கிற இடத்தெல்லாம் வந்துட்டு வி ஹாவ் டு அவாய்டுங்கிறது அட்லீஸ்ட் த ப்ராக்டிஸிங் மியூசிஷியன் கச்சேரியில் பாடுறச்ச வந்துட்டு இது திருப்பி திருப்பி பாடக்கூடாது அப்படிங்கிறத வந்து தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும். ஐ வாஸ் வெரி ஹாப்பி தட் ஹி வாஸ் ஏபிள் டு பாயிண்ட் அவுட் தட் மனோதர்ம சங்கீதம் வந்துட்டு ஒரு மனோதர்ம சங்கீதம்ங்கிறது வந்துட்டு நிரவலில் வரைச்ச காரணம் என்ன தெரியுமா? பிகாஸ் த மியூசிஷியன் ஹேஸ் நாட் ஓன்லி தியாகராஜா ஹேஸ் கிவன் ஸ்கோப், he has given scope so that the musicians will exploit that scope. அதை எக்ஸ்ப்ளாய்ட் பண்ணுறதுக்கு வந்துட்டு அவளுக்கு அந்த கெப்பாசிட்டி இருந்ததுன்னா சரியான இடத்துல அது வந்துட்டு they should express it. So I am very happy that the session is coming to an end, and I am very extremely thankful to all the panel members. They were able to throw so much light on the topic. So we will try to have another session in the coming years to come, because there are so many aspects which has to be covered in this. Any questions from the audience if they have got? Yes, one or two we will write like to inga vaanga sir inga vandudunga illa adu video la varanume. So adu ama adu computer question kekkadava you can maybe hold you can ask the question there also illa sir vandittu adu recording kuda.
First of all, thank you very much unga ellarkum. என்னோட கேள்வி என்னன்னா, how did you all spoke about how uniquely different they were and what each of the members of the Trimurtis the contribution was. Now what I wanted to find out was how did they influence each other, because it's also a coincidence that there is an overlap in terms of when they lived. There are also anecdotal references about how Tyagaraja Swami met Dikshitar and all of that. Somebody spoke about Sangatis. Now we all seem to incorporate Sangatis in pretty much everybody's compositions, right? Though it is accepted that it was Tyagaraja's invention, so to speak. So how did their music influence each other? For example, are there references to a certain aspect of their contribution which was taken on by the other person in the Trinity and then expanded upon? So that's my question. Thank you.
இல்லை, வேவ் லென்த் ஈக்குவலாக இருக்கிறவா அவளுக்கு வந்துட்டு தாட்ஸ் வேர் ஆல்சோ பி லைக் தட். ஷீ பாயிண்டட் அவுட் ஓ ரங்கசாயி அண்ட் ஓ ஜெகதம்பா. அந்த லெங்க்த்து அந்த ஓக்கு எவ்வளோ கொடுக்கணுங்கிறது வந்துட்டு அவளுக்கு வந்துட்டு அந்த வந்துட்டு அவள் தோணியிருக்கே இல்லையா? ஓ ஜெகதம்பாவுக்கு வந்துட்டு எவ்வளோ ஓ அப்படின்னு கூப்பிடுறச்சா வந்துட்டு அது வந்து ஒரு அக்ஷரத்தில் கூட முடிச்சிருக்கலாம். அது இல்லாமல் அது 3 அக்ஷரத்துக்கு அது தள்ளி ஓரங்கசாயி அந்த மாதிரி பண்ணியிருக்கார். தே ஹவ் நாட் மெட் ஈச் அதர், பட் தி வேவ் லென்த் வந்து அவளுக்கு ஒரு மாதிரி இருந்திருக்கு, அவ்வளோதான். இன்னை தவிர வந்துட்டு இட் இஸ் நாட். அப்புறம் வந்துட்டு இவ எல்லோரும் தியாகராஜா வந்துட்டு நம்ம ஹி வாஸ் இன்ஃப்ளூயன்ஸ்டு பை பத்ராச்சல் ராம்தாஸ். அவரோட காம்போசிஷன்ஸ் எல்லாம் பஜனை பத்திரத்தில் வந்தது தானே. இதெல்லாம் வந்துட்டு இவாளும் வந்துட்டு உஞ்சவரித்தியில் தானே பாடிட்டு இருந்திருக்கார் தியாகராஜெல்லாம். ஸோ அந்த பஜனை அவள் கேட்டதுலேருந்து அதுலேருந்து வந்துட்டு இன்னும் இன்ஸ்பிரேஷன் வந்திருக்கும் அவளுக்கு எனக்கு தோன்றுறது. பட் ஆனால் வந்துட்டு இவாளுக்கு வந்துட்டு இந்த இன்ஸ்பிரேஷன் வந்ததுனால அதில் அதுக்கப்புறம் ஒன்ஸ் யூ கோ இன் டு தட் சப்ஜெக்ட் நியூ ஐடியாஸ் கம்ஸ் டு யூ அண்ட் தட் மேக்ஸ் யூ கம்போஸ் டிஃப்ரெண்ட் வெரைட்டிஸ் அப்படி தான் கொடுத்துருக்கா. ஆமாம்மா, இட்ஸ் நாட் நெசசரி. இப்போ வந்துட்டு நான் டெல்லியில் இருக்கேன், இன்னொருத்தர் யாரோ மெட்ராஸில் இருக்கா. ஆனால் எங்களுக்கு வந்துட்டு சேம் இப்போ நாங்கள் வந்துட்டு இன்ஃபேக்ட் வி ஹேட் ஒன் டிஸ்கஷன் ஓவர் தி ஃபோன் அபவுட் என்ன இந்த டாப்பிக்கில் பண்ணலாங்கிறச்ச. அப்போ வந்துட்டு அவளுக்கும் அந்த லைனில் அவள் வந்துட்டு யோஜனை பண்ணியிருக்கா இல்லையா, அது வந்துட்டு நான் ஒன்றும் சொல்லி கொடுக்கல, நான் சொல்லலை இந்த மாதிரி தான் நீங்கள் பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிவிட்டு. அவளுக்கு அந்த மாதிரி அந்த ஆஸ்பெக்ட் சொன்னோடனே இதெல்லாம் தோணியிருக்கு. ஸோ அதனால் வந்துட்டு இட்ஸ் நாட் நெசசரி தட் they have been influenced by me or any such thing. சங்கதி வந்துட்டு ஒன்லி யூ ஹாவ் காட் ஐடியாஸ். அந்த ராகத்தில் வந்துட்டு ஹோல்டு இருக்கணும். ஒரு சங்கதி நம்ம போடுறோம் அப்படிங்கிறத வந்துட்டு சொம்பதி பாடுறது வந்துட்டு சங்கதி இன்சர்ட் பண்ணுறதுக்காக இல்லை, சங்கத்தியில் வந்துட்டு அதில் தானே ஸ்டஃப் இருக்கான்னு பார்க்கணும். நம்ம அதுக்கு தானே ஸ்கோப் கொடுக்கறதுக்கு தானே வந்துட்டு நிரவல் வச்சுருக்கா இல்லையா. நிரவலை நீ எக்ஸ்பிரஸ் பண்ணே, அதில் பண்ணலாமே. நிரவல் இஸ் ஆல்சோ அனதர் வெரைட்டி ஆஃப் சங்கதிஸ் ஒன்லி. நம்மளோட ஐடியாஸை வந்துட்டு சங்கதி ஃபார்மில் கொடுக்குறோம், அதுக்கு ஒரு தாளம், ஒரு ரெஸ்ட்ரிக்ஷன், எடுப்பு எல்லாத்துக்கும் வந்துட்டு அதை பார்க்குறோம். அதனால் வந்துட்டு நம்மளோட ஸ்கோப்பை கொடுக்கறதுக்கு தான் வந்துட்டு மனோதர்ம சங்கீதம் கொடுக்குறேன். ஸோ ஹீ கரெக்ட்லி பாயிண்டட் இட் அவுட் தட் மனோதர்ம சங்கீதம் as given as scope to express our creative ability.
The other thing is that we have to remember that they were united and in a similar intellectual and creative framework because of Shastra. They were all very Shastrajñas. They just didn't compose out of நம்ம நிறைய வாட்டி சொல்லியிருக்கோம் that they were very learned and the Shastra was very clear. So that also united. Why Shankarabharanam is very similar in all of them, or why even the poetics of Shastra, even poetic Shastra, Dvitiyakshara Prasa, all of them followed. It's not that they sat and discussed it, they knew, they were masters of Sahitya and poetics also. So adanal many times I used to wonder, chelappo namakku confusion agum. For example, in this Devi Brova Samyam, for a long time I was wondering why the Dvitiyakshara Prasa is not there. Then I figured out that the second line that we sing along with the Pallavi, Devi Brova Samayamide Ativegame Vachi Navedalu Tirchi Karunim. No, Navedalu actually is the Anupallavi. So in the Vava anga varudhu. But nama சேர்ந்து பாடுறது, I thought that was the second line of the Pallavi. So even something like the poetics, அதில் இருக்கிற கிராமர், அதில் இருக்கிற ரூல்ஸ், ப்ராசிடி, they were masters of. So that also united them in that sense. They had the similar knowledge base and they followed that. They were very traditional. Even though they were innovating, their basic framework was rooted in the Shastra.
இப்போ தியாகராஜா வாஸ் இன்ஃப்ளூயன்ஸ்டு பை ராமதாசாங்கிறது வந்துட்டு நிச்சயமாக அவரோட காம்போசிஷன்ஸில் தெரியறது. இட்ஸ் நாட் பிகாஸ் ஆஃப் தி தீம். திவ்யநாமத்துலேயும் அது வந்துட்டு ரொம்ப விசிபிளாக தெரியறது. சிமிலர்லி நௌகா சரித்திரம் சொல்கிறச்ச வந்துட்டு ஐ வாண்ட் டு மென்ஷன் ஒன் திங். ஹீ ஹாஸ் நாட் கிராஸ்ட் விந்தியாஸ், பட் யமுனா இட் இஸ் தேர் அக்ராஸ் தி விந்தியாஸ். அந்த யமுனாவை பற்றி அவ்வளோ அழகாக சொல்லியிருக்கார். பிகாஸ் நான் டெல்லியில் தான் இருக்கேன், நான் யமுனாலாம் பார்த்துருக்கேன். யமுனா இப்போ தான் வந்துட்டு ரொம்ப மோசமாக இருக்கே தவிர அட் ஒன் டைம் அந்த காலத்தில் மத்ராஸ் சைட்லெல்லாம் வந்துட்டு அக்கறையில் பார்க்கறச்சு அவ்வளோ அழகாக இருக்கும். இதே இங்கேயே டு பி ஃப்ரேங்க் ஈடுலேனி மலையை மாறுத்துமச்சே காவேரி தட்டமந்து அப்படின்னு சொல்லியிருக்காரு. அந்த 68லலாம் வந்துட்டு அந்த திருவையாறில் வந்துட்டு காவேரிக்கு அக்ராஸில் வாழை தோட்டம் இருக்கும், அவ்வளோ அழகாக இருக்கும். இப்போ ஒன்றுமே பிகாஸ் தட் வாஸ் தி ஃபஸ்ட் டைம் இன் 68 ஐ கேம் டு ஃபார் தி ஃபஸ்ட் டைம். எங்களுக்கு வந்துட்டு டெல்லியிலே பிறந்து வளர்ந்தவாள் எங்களுக்கு வந்துட்டு ஒரு வாஷ்ரூம் இல்லை, எங்கள் குளிக்கிறதுக்கு எங்கே இருக்குது குளிக்கிறதுக்கு எங்களை டிஆர்எஸ் அழைச்சின்னு வந்துட்டார். எங்கே குளிக்கிறதுங்கிறது கூட எங்களுக்கு தெரியல, எல்லாம் தண்ணியில் எழுந்த. ஸோ அந்த டைமில் பார்க்குறது. அப்புறம் ஈடுலேனி மலையை மாறுத்தமச்சேங்கிறது அந்த தண்ணியில் விழுந்து வர்ற காற்று இருக்கணும். வி ரியலி அந்த சொன்ன ஒரு வேர்டு கூட வந்துட்டு தப்பு இல்லை. அனுபவித்து பாடியிருக்கார். ஸோ அதனால் வந்துட்டு தியாகராஜர் கேஸில் வந்துட்டு நௌகா சரித்திரம் பூரா வந்துட்டு 100% இமேஜினேஷன் விச் ஹி ஹேஸ் டன். இதே சொல்கிற இடத்துல வந்து பிரகலாத பக்தி வச்ச டைமில் வந்துட்டு ராமா வாஸ் நாட் தேர் இல்லையா? அதில் ராமாவை பற்றி ஏகமாக சொல்லியிருக்கார் அவர். பிரகலாத பக்தி விஜயம் நௌகா சரித்திரம் இஸ் வெரி பியூட்டிஃபுல். அண்ட் மோர் ஓவர் ஹி வாஸ் இன்ஃப்ளூயன்ஸ்டுங்கிறதுக்கு சொல்கிறதுக்கு காரணம் என்ன தெரியுமா? த லாங்குவேஜ் விச் ஹி ஹேஸ் எம்ப்ளாய்ட் இன் திவ்யநாமம் அண்ட் உற்சவ சம்பிரதாயம் அண்ட் திஸ் நௌகா சரித்திரம் இஸ் யூனிக். ரொம்ப சொல்லணும். ஏன்னா அந்த தெலுங்கு வந்துட்டு இட் ஹேஸ் நாட் பின் he himself அவரே வந்துட்டு he has in his composition and the employment of Telugu is different from this.
I also feel that there must have been a little bit of overlap. In addition, இப்போ இவா சொன்னதுக்கெல்லாம் ஏன்னா they have metங்கிறது we have evidence. And கண்டிப்பாக இவா சிஷ்யா பாடி அவள் கேட்காம இருந்திருக்கிறது is unlikely நினைக்கிறேன். So we have compositions like சீதம்மா மாயமாவோ ராமச்சந்திரம் பாவையாமி almost same met. Or you have O Rangashayi and you have Shri Subramaniaya Namaste. So I think it is fair to say that
மனசு சுவாதீன and அக்ஷயலிங்கு தான் சொல்லணும்.
ஸோ அது எங்கேயான ஒரு காதல் கேட்டு ஒன்று தங்கியிருக்கலான்னு எனக்கு தோணுது. தட் இஸ் நாட் டேக்கிங் அவே ஃப்ரம் தேர் கிரியேட்டிவிட்டி ஆர் இன்ஜெனுவிட்டி. பட் ஒரே பீரியடில் ஒரே ஏரியாவில் இருந்து கம்ப்ளீட்டாக அவ்வளோ ஐ திங்க் இட்ஸ் எ லிட்டில் அன்ரியலிஸ்டிக்.
See, it is not a question, because the broader questions that they come, I am from a discipline which looks at the evolution of history of music. That is why I thought that it is better to clarify certain basic doubts. All music cultures have 3 stages. Generally, it is accepted. First is the stage of chanting. Say, for example, Gregorian chants. With the invention of piano, the modern music came. To give an example, in our system, there is an intermediary thing called recitation. That also had musical, say like the Shastra Prayoga. I'll come back to that a little later. How to pose the question and look at the contemporary evidence, if there is any, then it gets strengthened. The post Sangeet Ratnakara tradition under Vijayanagar, which consolidated, that is what these people represent. So there is a kind of a pan South Indian tradition I have written. That's why, see, Tyagaraja has given me scope to write Maratha Tanjore in the poetry of Tyagaraja. I can give you an example. துலுக்க வீதியில் பானக போஜனை இருக்கு. சோமையா சொல்லு பொண்டாட்டி யாரு கூட இழுத்துட்டு போடனா இதெல்லாம் வரும். அங்கெல்லாம் நிரவல் பண்ணக்கூடாது. So I am only just giving an example. As a contemporary observer, he has other social things also. But we are only looking at the musical part of it. The explanation is they represent a common tradition which has consolidated, and the musical forms were known even before them. Then in the same breath, I would like to add, I will give equal credit to the generation that succeeded these 3 people. அவா இல்லைன்னா நமக்கு இதெல்லாம் புரிஞ்சிருக்காது. பட்னா சுப்பிரமணியர் ஜெனரேஷன் நான் சொல்கிறேன். சி, ட்ரெடிஷனில் நியராக இருக்கிறவா தான் என்ன பண்ணினான்னு தெரியும். அந்த மியூசிக்கலாஜிக்கல் விஸ்டத்தை நமக்கு கொடுத்தவா அந்த ஜெனரேஷன் தான். இவா எவ்வளவு பிரயோகம், ஆஸ் ராதாஜி ரைட்லி செட், ஸ்கோப் இருக்குது. ஐ ஸ்டில் ரிமெம்பர் ஒன் மேனஸ்கிரிப்ட் விச் வாஸ் டிஸ்பிளேட் இன் மியூசிக் அகாடமி. தாரிணி தெலிசுகொண்டியில் 19 சங்கதி போட்டிருக்கோம். இந்த மேனஸ்கிரிப்ட் யாராவது பார்த்துருக்காளா தெரியல. போட்டுட்டு ஒரு அடிக்குறிப்பு போட்டிருக்கோம், அவா சாரீர வசதி போல் பாடிக்கொள்ளவும். எது கான்சர்ட் வர்த்தினாஸ்கிறது ஆடியன்ஸை பொறுத்தது. இப்போ இவா பாடின ஆடியன்ஸ் எப்படி இருக்கா, அடுத்தாப்புல இருக்கிற ஆடியன்ஸ் எப்படி இருக்கா, இப்போ இருக்கிற ஆடியன்ஸ் எப்படி இருக்காங்கிறது தான் that determines the concert worthiness. These are 2-3 points I thought I would add.
I won't take much time. இவ்வளோ பேர் பேசினப்புறம் இந்த மைக் என்கிட்ட வர்றது அப்ராப்ரியேட்டே இல்லை. இவ்வளோ ஸ்காலர்ஸ், இவ்வளோ எமினென்ட் அக்காம்ப்ளிஷ்ட் பீப்புள். பட் இந்த கொற்ற மழையிலையும் வந்ததுக்கு முதல்ல ரொம்ப 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 தேங்க்ஸ் எல்லாருக்குமே. அண்ட் இப்போ ஒரு 10 minutes வரைக்கும் ஆடியன்ஸ் ஃபுல் ஹவுஸ் இருந்தது, யாருமே வெளியில் போகல. ஸோ தட் இஸ் ப்ரூஃப் தட் திஸ் இஸ் இந்த டெப்த் ஆஃப் த டிஸ்கஷன் எவ்வளோ எங்கேஜிங்காக இருந்தது எல்லாத்துக்கும். ஆன் டாப் ஆஃப் இட் இங்கே இருக்கிறவாளுக்கு ஆஃப்கோர்ஸ் தெரியாது, பிகாஸ் தே டென்ட் லுக் அட் தேர் ஃபோன்ஸ். ஆன்லைன் ஆல்சோ we've got a lot of engagement, நிறைய நல்ல காமெண்ட்ஸ் அண்ட் குட் ஃபீட்பேக். ஸோ இட்ஸ் பீன் எக்ஸ்ட்ரீம்லி வெல் ரிசீவ்ட். ஸோ கான்சர்ட் வர்த்தினஸ் பற்றி நீங்கள் பேசினேன். ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி இது ரொம்பவே ரீச் ஆகிருக்கு எல்லாருக்கும், ஈவன் தோ த சப்ஜெக்ட் இஸ் வெரி வெரி டீப். தேங்க் யூ ஸோ மச் டு எவ்ரிபடி அண்ட் ஈவன் த பீப்புள் ஹூ சப்போர்ட்டட் அஸ் த்ரூ on the mics, on the sound, and எல்லாருக்குமே ரொம்ப 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 தேங்க்ஸ். And with this, this is the close of the session. And 4 o'clock இன்னைக்கு the next program is there. Program sheet இருக்கு, அதில் பார்த்துட்டு whoever, I mean it's possible, please come and attend it. Thank you so much. Namaskaram.